All set.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful Elkton Middle School. Apologize, we had a late meeting at City Hall 2 weeks ago. That's why we're here tonight. And last Monday we had a celebration, not a celebration, remembrance of 9/11, and that's why the regular council meeting was that evening. So that's how we arrived here. Those that were involved in setting this up, I thank them. I'm sure the council thanks them. They did a great job. And I certainly appreciate it. I'm sure other council members, ours on the council also. With that, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Terry.
Present.
Councilman Costa.
Present.
Councilman Figueroa.
Present.
Councilwoman Fonseca. Present. Councilman Jose.
Present.
Councilwoman Rivera. Present. Councilman Swan.
Present.
We have quorum is present.
Thank you. Those please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, before the public comment, I just certainly want a moment of silence for all those that are suffering because of hurricanes, all those that have suffered in the past hurricanes over the decades, and certainly for all people that could be affected in the future by hurricanes and other tragedies. Just a moment of silence and wish them the best and recover soon. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. President, we're going to move some items at a later time. Do you want me to announce them now or wait until we get there?
Yes, yeah, without objection, we've got some changes. We've got some presentations tonight. We're not sure how long it will take.
So the first, I'm going to list the items that are going to come up after 5C, which is the Department Financial Reports. We are going to have the hearing and consideration of agreement between the City of Central Falls and the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 2, which is item E on page 4. We are then going to hear on page 2, item E, resolution supporting the charter renewal application of the Sheila Skip Noel Leadership Academy. And then we will move on page 2 as well, item 7A and 7B. First will be item 7B, presentation by the reopened Ralph J. Holden Community Center Commission, followed by the presentation by Dr. Michael.
Thank you.
First, we have approval of records. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, public comment. I skipped public comment. Thank you. Al Romanowitz.
My name's Al Romanowitz. I live at 303 Central Street. Long drive from the walk, so these three are just one number of cases, actually.
Could you speak into the mic?
Sure. And, first thing I wanted to know, there was a vet resolution that the last meeting I attended that was given to the president. I'm assuming that the president decided not to put the request on the agenda. Is that true? Or?
That is true. It's not relevant at this time. The resolution that was handed by Mr. Jose contained naming the park and moving the monument to the library. 1 year ago, August 2016, we did name the park. 1 year ago, 2016, we had groundbreaking. 1 year ago, in August 2016, the design and the plans were laid out. There's no reason to deviate from that, and the resolution to me, not relevant.
I guess the next question is that, did you inform the council, is that, of that decision?
No, I didn't.
The other question, it's moving, but I'll ask it anyway, is, did you get a chance to discuss, okay, you're right, or an opportunity to the council to override your decision?
No, I didn't. It's NR, which is not relevant. I set the agenda, there was no need. Again, 1 year ago, that was decided. The design, the plan, the groundbreaking, and the naming. If you want to discuss further as far as the monument at the Al, for 3 years, you've been after that monument at the library. I don't know why. I don't know why. It belongs, I'll tell you right now, it belongs.
But I only wanted, so the answers I got.
Every meeting, Al, I don't want to
want
argue.
anything else.
I have something here. There's over 200, that monument does not even belong to the city. It belongs to 200 donors. And there's 177 names that you should send a letter to.
Said no,
Get
no,
permission
no,
to
is all I
open the
need.
monument. Let's put it to rest. Thank you. Let the monument rest. Thank you.
Lorraine Savard.
Lorraine Savard, 76 Emmett Street, Central Falls. Robin Perry, I hope you don't yell at me like you just yelled today.
That's not yelling.
Oh, no.
Bill Belichick yells.
Okay, all right. I think one of the times that I spoke to the council, I asked someone on the council, anyone on the council, to contact the Office of Energy Resources to try and get a class, a talk, a presentation on solar energy. I haven't heard anything from any one of you or from, the website or the mayor's website on solar energy and the possibilities and the ins and outs and questions that I myself have, and I'm sure there are other people in the city who want to know how, what, when. So,
I got good news for you.
oh, good. Can I sit down now?
Yes, Councilwoman Fonseca just wrote down that next month, the second Monday in October, someone regarding solar energy will speak.
Where?
Hopefully the council decides. I can't guarantee that, but
Thank you.
thank you, Lorraine. See, I didn't yell.
Niaz Ahmad. Sir, are you here for the business license? You do not have to speak now. I'll call you later. Okay? And Jeff Arujo.
Members of City Council, my name is Jeff Arujo, and I'm very lucky and privileged to be the president of St. Paul's FOP Lodge 2. On behalf of the hardworking brothers and sisters of St. Paul's Spa. I just want to briefly address to you before consideration of ratifying the CBA between the city and the union. And in particular, I want to share what was involved in reaching that agreement and how it is important to our membership. We began negotiations about 6 months ago, and our number one goal was to improve the pay and the benefits of the members of St. Paul Police. It was our number one goal for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the men and women of the St. Paul Police Department are working a very dangerous and critical job, and they should be appropriately compensated for doing so. And I can say firsthand, as a detective, I work in many agencies, local, state, and federal, in the state. And U.S. St. Paul police officers are amongst the most highly respected in the state. We hear that quite often about the work they give and what we do, and it's acknowledged statewide. And that's a testament to each of the officers, the leadership throughout the city, the department, and the support that you, the city council, and the city provides to us. We're also certified by CLEA, nationally accredited, something that's not common in the state. And nationally, it puts us amongst another privileged class of police departments in this nation. We also study police pay and benefits statewide, and our department is among the lowest paid. We knew that going forward, to get toward a better compensation in order to keep people here and attract other officers to come here. And we don't want to be just part of their trainings. We want to keep people and retain people. Keep doing the good work we do here. At the same time, we appreciate that everyone in the city has to make sacrifices. And so when I say that our number one goal is to increase pay and benefits, I say with the understanding that the city has limits. There's a balance that needs to be struck. This CBA truly represents this balance. We didn't get everything we wanted, and the city did not get everything it wanted. And we are still probably amongst the lowest paid in the state, but together we made some improvements, and we're certainly moving in the right direction. And when you look at the contract that was reached, do so and keep in mind that it was vetted by Len Morganis, and the city can't afford this. It's been ratified by our officers 32-1, and it will ensure peace, labor peace for the next 5 years for the city. So in closing, I want to thank you for your time, members of the city council, the city, the mayor, and his staff. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Anyone,
Mr. Chairman.
please?
Yes.
Okay, not done. Okay, not done. This is on the public comment.
Under public comment, you have the right to ask.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Just public comment. We'll discuss it later on.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on occasion, I beg to disagree with your opinions on certain things. Under public comments, I believe the council has a right to ask the individual who is speaking questions and respond. To not allow any comments, I think is wrong. But I will wait until after, Mr. Chairman, but I believe as a practice, if there is a question of council, they can.
Okay, I just got a ruling from Matt. Go ahead.
Jeff, I know on the police department, the decision that has come to this before the council also needs to be ratified pursuant to the bankruptcy, because I know I was at the bankruptcy hearing this morning, and this is one of the remaining issues that is still before the bankruptcy court. I'm asking the union's actions to get this ratified also, which needs to be ratified for the bankruptcy court. I will ask that of you, if it needs to be referred to the solicitor, of what the involvement with the bankruptcy court, final bankruptcy rulings, I will also refer that to the solicitor.
Councilman Zaire, to my knowledge, it does not have to be. From what I've been told, but I'll leave that to the legalese.
No. Because I know this morning, the fire department, the police department's decision was mentioned about being brought up at the council meeting for a finalization.
Council, what was referenced this morning was that in the city's report to the bankruptcy judge, it referenced the arbitration the city and the union had started because there was no union contract. The city's attorney updated the judge that in fact the contract had been reached, arbitration was no longer, if the council approved it tonight, arbitration would end, arbitration without the cost of procedure, and so that would be a good thing for the city if we wanted to update the judge.
My only other question would be, historically in the past, union contracts have been approved for no more than 3 years. I recognize that the last union contract for the fire department was, I believe, in excess of 3 years, and I was told that that was pursuant to the bankruptcy. This contract, from my understanding, is also for 5 years, And I just wanted to know the relationship in state law allowing greater than 3 years.
State law provides 2 instances where a city may enter a collective bargaining agreement more than 3 years. The first instance is if their pension is not funded above 60%, is in critical status, which Central Falls is. The second is if the city or town is under the jurisdiction of the state pursuant to a budget commission or receivership or a post-receivership AFO, which we are. So both conditions are relevant.
And since the bankruptcy could have been finalized today, but it has not, this will also allow us to extend the contract to 5 years because it's still an ongoing bankruptcy.
The bankruptcy doesn't pertain to this issue. It's a state statute. Bankruptcy is a federal court. So the state statute allows the city, for purposes of fiscal stability, to enter into a contract up to 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Next item is approval of records. You have 3 for your consideration. The meeting minutes of July 10th, August 1st, and August 20th.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Legend?
I have a standing comment on the resolutions, Mr. Chairman, that they do not conform to the detail that I've requested in the past. And because of that, I move that they be tabled, revised, and brought back before the council.
We have a motion by Councilman Nazir to table the previous minutes of the meeting. Is there a second? Hearing none, seeing none, motion dies. Is there a motion to approve minutes of the meeting? Second motion by Councilman Rivera, second by Councilman Salat. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Thank you. Next item.
Second, communications, you have 2 for received. Proclamation by Mayor James Diosa, Play Ball Summer, and proclamation by Mayor James Diosa, also diaper awareness.
So we see, thank you.
Item C is Department Financial Reports. City Clerk, Code of Enforcement, Fire Department, Police Department, and Finance. For City President.
Thank you.
This is really out of order a little bit here.
By choose the police department, right back up.
This is the hearing and consideration of agreement between the City of Central Falls and the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 2.
Has everyone read the contract? I have a memo. I have spoke to Glenn McGinnis, the AFO, and people here and they are very happy with how it turned out. I know both sides worked very hard. There was some give and take, but I guess, as the officer said, both sides lost a little bit. They come together, and it seems both sides are happy. As far as I'm concerned, if they're happy, we should be happy. Also, me personally, I don't feel I was involved with any of the negotiations, therefore, at this late stage, I don't feel I should jump in and say, Karen agreed. I feel comfortable. I know that the administration feels comfortable, and apparently the union feels comfortable. And I know there was a lot of work, a lot of negotiation. I guess an arbitrator was involved. That's basically what I did speak to Len, and he's satisfied. Anyone else?
No.
Is there a change in the medical benefits and increase?
No.
And then, I know that you you guys are asking for an increase, but I have a lot of constituents asking for control in certain streets and I intend to see.
We always do our best.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Luzay.
Mr. Chairman, I did speak to Mr. Arujo regarding this. I only feel that I am in support of the contract. I feel that in the last few years, especially during bankruptcy, the city has asked its public service employees to make great sacrifices. We have placed an unusually high burden on our retirees, which I requested a public hearing on it, a workshop, and it has been denied again and again and again. The police department and the other public safety officials have been sacrificed through many avenues of financial and also in benefits and personnel. I think this starts them on a road to the benefit to the officers, with justice to our officers down and for the next 5 years. I question the term only because it's unusual to have more than a 3-year contract, but that 3 years to a 5-year, I fully support. With that, Mr. Chairman, I endorse and I support this. I make a motion to approve the contract.
I second it. We have a motion by Councilman Lizette, seconded by Councilman Solano, to approve the contract between the police union and the city of Central Falls. Any further discussion?
Yes, one other question, Mr. Chairman. The entire membership of the police department is covered under this contract. I would only refer to ask for clarification that the police chief is not, and does he have a separate individual contract that is present to cover his employment with the city?
To my knowledge, the police chief nor the fire chief has any contract with the city.
He what?
Neither the police chief or the fire chief have any contract with the city. So I'm not sure what the agreement is. You'll have to speak with the city regarding that in terms of what they have for benefits or how it's paid out. But they're not part of, police chief's not part of our CBA.
He's not part of the union, but he's under, I would only ask for clarification by the solicitor. My impression was that the police chief is under contract with the city. He's not, there is no contract with the city and police or fire?
Correct.
All right, well, that's, I didn't know that. I thought they were under contract in the last discussions I've had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes,
Frank?
yes, I just want to make a comment about the police and that noising law, when the police arrive to some places that they have some celebrations. Sometimes the police are very rude, and sometimes they make people go out of celebration that they have. And I think people have the right to celebrate and to join together as a family, friend, and the police should respect that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk, please, hearing none, seeing none, clerk, please call the roll call vote.
Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa? Councilman Fonseca? Yes. Councilman Lozay?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rivera? Councilman Solano?
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. President.
Thank you, best of luck.
Thank you all very much.
Good luck. And thank you for your service.
It is now the resolution supporting the charter renewal application of the Sheila C. Skip Noel Leadership Academy, and is introduced by Councilwoman Rivera.
I have the executive director of the academy. They're applying for another application for another 5 years. I want to thank him for being here. He came with his 3 babies. I told him he didn't have to come, but he had.
We you provide babysitting? Maria? Maria? Tia? $6 an hour.
Okay, well, good afternoon, council members. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'll just share a little bit about our school and I'm thrilled to answer any questions you have. So our school is called the Noel Leadership Academy. We're a public charter high school. We have 160 students. We have 2 campuses, one's in Providence, one's here in Central Falls. Our school has a unique mission to serve pregnant and parenting young adults. It's one of the very few schools in the country with that specific mission. I can talk to you more if you're interested about how we provide services specific to that population. But I'll just sort of share briefly, we were founded in 2013. Like all public charter schools in Rhode Island, we have a 5-year charter. So we have applied to the Department of Education for charter renewal. And we're at the point in our charter renewal application where we're asking some of our friends and supporters, particularly in our 2 host communities of Providence and Central Falls, for expressions of support. And we're really pleased, for example, in the city of Providence, that Mayor Alorza has submitted a letter of support. The Providence School Department, the superintendent has submitted a letter of support. And we've asked for the same here in Central Falls, and we're really grateful and pleased that Mayor Diosa has done that. And really grateful that Councilwoman Rivera sponsored the resolution that's in front of you this evening. So maybe I'll just pause there. I'd be thrilled to answer any questions that you have about our school. And I'd also just love to open an invitation for council members to come visit our school. We're not far from here. We're in the old YWCA facility on Hawes Street. And we'd be thrilled to invite you to come anytime when you'd like to come.
Thank you. Any questions of the gentleman?
Yes, so you say you have 160 students there,
Yeah, so 80 in each campus, so 80 here in Central.
and what grade is that?
So it's a good question. So we're a high school. Our students are 15 to 21 years old. We don't have sort of traditional like freshman, sophomore years because all of our students are what we call overage and undercredited. So these are students who went to at least one, oftentimes more than one other high school before coming to us. So they're they're sort of like 4-year graduation cohort, right? So you might be 18 years old, 19 years old, with kind of like a freshman's level worth of high school credits. And what's unique about our school is that we can serve you until you're 21 years old, and you graduate with a high school diploma. So whereas in other high schools in Rhode Island, if you're 19 years old and you only have a handful of credits, it's possible your high school might say, well, we're sorry, but we can't really serve you. Our school is unique in that we can re-enroll you, and we can get you back on track to high school diploma. Since we've opened, we've had about 150 graduates who are in most cases previously off-track students, oftentimes students who had actually dropped out of high school a year or 2 later, decided they wanted to re-enroll in high school, and they came to us as opposed to the GED program. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. What is the way you use to enroll them in?
Yeah, so it's all governed by state statute. As a public charter school, there's no fee or tuition to apply. There's no application really per se. You simply fill out a registration form. Essentially, if there's more students than we have spots in our school, we have a public lottery, which gets audited every year, and we enroll randomly through that lottery.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
Yes, good evening. I'm not familiar with your school. Are you leasing the property from the Y? And you've been in operation since 2013? The resolution says you're at 160 students from across Rhode Island, and campus is located in Providence and Central Falls. In your Central Falls location, what is your breakdown, male, female? What is your breakdown of Central Falls students and other communities?
Sure, so we're about 80% young women, about 20% young men. We're about 2/3 pregnant and parenting and 1/3 not pregnant and parenting. As a public charter school, we have a slight preference in our lottery that we're permitted to do for pregnant and parenting students, but truly it's a public school, anyone can enroll in our school. And we do enroll students across the whole state of Rhode Island, so we're honored to be here in Central Falls. Central Falls School, I want to tell you the wrong number, over 80 students, perhaps somewhere between 30 and 40 of them are Central Falls residents. We have a group from Kentucky and a group from Providence. This school in particular has a group from Woonsocket that comes over there.
Do you operate on the normal school hours or late or?
Yeah, great question. So our design is intended to be, to offer more supports. So we are open longer than the traditional school year. We're open for about 220 school days. We have summer school, we're open for 4 weeks in the summer. We're open on Saturdays. It's intentionally designed to provide a lot of support and access for students who need extra time and extra support.
Just one last question. You mentioned, do you issue diplomas or certificate of completion?
No, it's a high school.
It's a normal high school graduation diploma.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I had the pleasure of visiting Normal Academy, and it's truly fulfilling to go in there and see that you have all these educators focused on these young parents and these teenage pregnant moms. They offer a lot of different services to these kids, and I know because I talk to many of them.
Thank you, Maria. Anyone else? John?
I am familiar with your work, and thank you for everything that you guys do. Another question is, where are your kids now? The ones that graduated, what are they doing?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So we're in the process now of looking at our graduation requirements for our school. And so our school, where should I begin? So last year, our school engaged in a strategic planning process. We revised our mission statement to be really direct and concise about what we do, which is prepare pregnant parenting, disconnected youth for success in college, career, and family life. And we're in the process now of revising our graduation requirements to really ensure that every student who graduates from our school is prepared for success as well for the workforce. Of the 150 students who graduated from us, we do have some good data on them. Truthfully, many of them are working part-time and attending classes 6 or 5 part-time. And we have a big focus on increasing the number of students who are in 4-year colleges, for example. We have our first college advisor this year. So we're doing a lot of work on there. But to answer your question, most of our students are both working part-time and attending classes.
My niece graduated this year from there, and she's taking high school tests to Sierra right now.
It's great to know that there's some type of school like that is supporting those students, especially pregnant women, who sometimes they don't know what to do. So in that sense, I want to make a motion to do.
A motion by Councilman Castellano, second by Councilman Pacheco, and Councilman Acosta. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Ayes have it. So moved. Best of luck. Thank you very much.
This item is a presentation by the reopening the Ralph J. Holden Community Center Commission.
All right, good evening. I'm on the other side. So last year, around this time, August, the mayor commissioned a committee to figure out how we can reopen the community center here in Central Falls. So this was a project that we worked on for a year. I have Bruce Sawyer here with me, who chairs the Ralph J. Holden Scholarship Committee, and Manny Silva, who is a lifelong resident of Central Falls, Panthers coach, and works at Central Falls High School as well. So this past year, we did extensive research into the community center. We did community surveys, we had a public meeting at City Hall, We conducted surveys with youth, with adults, with seniors throughout the city. And we came up with a few recommendations for the council. We will give you more copies. We will provide you copies. In that report, there are recommendations for the mayor and the council to move this forward. So if you look at the last page, if you look at page 10, it says recommendations. One of the biggest recommendations is to establish a fundraising steering committee with a full-time staff person and allocate $100,000 for fiscal year 19 to begin the community center capital campaign. And this person will work closely with the mayor's office, with residents, with the planning office and community partners to support the multi-year capital venture. And through that, we had Louis Torado, who is an architect who does a lot of work in Rhode Island. He provided us a free, what's this called? Free analysis of what the community center would look like. The only location that we found that was available and open was the Ledge Street Municipal Lot on Ledge. And it's a 30,000 square feet facility. And it would cost close to $12 million with the pool. So that's what we're looking at. We have several recommendations in there for you to look over, but we as a committee worked very hard on this report. We got a lot of input from the community, and this is a big community need. It's a big, big need in the community. And I'm just hoping that my former colleague, my colleagues, the government, and the mayor will support this wonderful initiative. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sawyer.
Council President, members of the council. I just wanted to add my thoughts as far as the opening up or looking into establishing a community center within the confines of Central Falls. The community center, as you recall, in years past, was a vital part of the city of Central Falls, an integral part in my life. I'm sure the lives of a lot of us here today and a lot of other people. Unfortunately, it ceased to exist, ceased to be able to provide that level of outlet, if you will, to a lot of members of our community. And when we had the opportunity to discuss this with the mayor, the biggest point that I could make to him is that very rarely does the council get an opportunity such as this to work together for something that's going to benefit the entire community. Programs that will be there for our babies, obviously for the youth, for teenagers, and even for the elderly. This is a real program or something that could add definite value to the city, throughout all of its residents. So I just wanted to make the council aware of that. We're very aware of the cost of this type of endeavor, but again, the benefits in the long run will far outweigh the costs and will improve this city more than 100%, because that's what it served the community, how valuable it was when it existed. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Manny? You're all set?
It did help me out where I stand now, growing up, having a community center. It kind of put me in the right path because I didn't really have nowhere to go after school but the center. Now I start thinking about our young kids growing up to where once that bell swings and it's the afternoon, when is there for them to do other than maybe run the streets to where if we have a community center, they keep that hope and pride and staying out of trouble or having a bright future in a community center over their heads.
I want to thank you for your work. As they say, it's one small step, but probably a giant step for the community. So at least initiative, get this off the ground, and we have to succeed. Anyone else? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Rubio.
Thank you very much. I was at this, I attended this meeting, and I think something should be done. I have a variety of questions, and I don't think it's appropriate to ask those questions tonight without reviewing this. I'm concerned at a few things. One is establishing a full-time consultant position, fundraising for $100,000 or $100,000 seed money to allocate. I think we need to investigate further before we take deliberate, costly action. I am happy that the committee came up with a report. I think the report should be received by the council, and that the council should review it in committee also. And I believe at that point, a variety of different questions on behalf of the council, on behalf of our constituents would be asked. The cost of this, what did we say, 9 or 11 million? 12 million is a major endeavor. That's something that we need to discuss. All these items is something that the entire council should be in deliberative session on to discuss in the committee. Because I think you've established a good start of what we need, because we definitely need some type of facility in the city. The extent of that, I think we could review how you interpreted that, what you've recommended. Just receiving this now, I have dozens of questions now, but I'm not even sure without reviewing this. So I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that you establish a council committee to review it and to meet with the committee to, let's say, further elaborate and answer any further questions for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you guys for your work, and I want to say I look forward to receiving the report and looking through it. At a very basic level, given your closeness to this work and this project, what would you say was the main reason for the demise of the last community center? And based on your work so far, what do you think would prevent that same demise from happening to this one?
That's a long history. The demise of the community center is, I think, basically people took it for granted. And I think that your forerunners in the council and in the mayor's position took the community center for granted, didn't allocate the funds that were necessary in order to maintain the facility, in order to ensure that the community center continued as a going concern. This council, I know, will not make that same mistake. We're looking to, in the end, hopefully, build a building that will not only be structurally sound, but also be able to maintain itself and have sufficient funds on a regular basis to maintain it. So in essence, that's what happened, is the building that the community center was in really just, the city-owned building, and couldn't afford to make the necessary repairs. And the operating costs, it caused the community center to fold into itself. And also, just to kind of address the $100,000 as far as the fundraising effort is concerned, or fundraising position. When we talked and we went through with our sessions, it became clear to us that there's different types of entities that will give us in the city's monies in order to build structural buildings as opposed to operations. there's some outlets, some entities that will give money to service certain operations, and some that will give to buildings, but none of them will even get involved to the extent we need involvement unless the city is willing to commit something towards this whole enterprise. So $100,000, although that seems a lot in the budget, it will go a long way towards showing that the city is committed towards this end, because we're really looking at some pretty significant dollars as far as the capital we need, not only to build the facility, but to make sure that it operates efficiently and is financed efficiently.
That was going to be my follow-up question. So you had a sample of about 100 people who were at this meeting, who said they'd be willing to pay $0 to $20 a month. That's $240 a year. But of 100 people who are obviously by it, they showed up, so they care about the community center. How many members would you have to have as part of the community center in order to run? Because the operating cost right now with the pool is roughly $265,000 a year. And the $200 from 100 people is roughly $27,000.
And that's a really good question. And I think that's part of the demise as well for the old community center. People had $5 memberships for the year, $10 memberships for the year. So looking into the funds, we didn't rely so heavily on membership as sustaining the building. It's going to add significantly to it, and we decided I think it's detailed in the report, we would charge outside people more. If you're not a resident of Central Falls, we would charge them more to use our facility because that is extra income. But what we did is we allocated $300,000 a year coming from the city that will go towards maintaining the facility.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Just keep in mind, Mr. Lozere, this is just a presentation. There's nothing set in stone, this is a presentation.
I'm glad to have the presentation made.
This
so
is
that
the
we can
beginning
review this further.
stages, this is the first step.
I do have to comment that I did serve on the community center board for many, many years. I assisted the community center while I was mayor and afterwards. My opinion of the demise of the community center was financial to an extent, but prior to its closing, the city issued a bond referendum and spent close to $3 million in that building to upgrade the building, to put the addition on, to upgrade the kitchen, to install new kitchen equipment. So the value of the building and the expenses paid by the city in bond was extensive. The demise of the community center was, in my opinion, was the lack of the bankruptcy judge, or not the bankruptcy judge, the receiver from the state, to not allocate any funds to the continuation of the community center and allow its continued growth. The receiver at the time eliminated the community center, eliminated the senior citizen program, eliminated the busing, and eliminated a lot of other stuff. So without city support at the time, the receiver ultimately disposed of the property for about $100,000. 50,000. And we spent prior to that over $3 million. And the kitchen equipment was well in excess of $200,000. So I do not blame the lack of support by individuals. I blame the lack of support by an administration, by the receivership, which devastated. Yes, with that, as Councilman Acosta mentioned, the expenses are such that the support from the community has to be relevant and present. to support a community center besides a stipend from the city to operate it. Are you looking for, in this report, that, which I don't believe should be appropriate, that the city begins to allocate $100,000 for this fundraising event? Because this project, from my review, just preliminary, is a long-term estimate response to get this done. 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years. Not something that's going to take place within the next year or 2 or 3.
That's right, and this is why that person is monumental in pushing this forward. It's going to be a multi-year project, and in one of the recommendations, it says for 2020 for us to take out a bond for the building. After the city pays off a lot of the debt, by 2020 we'll pay off a lot of our bonds, and our credit rating will hopefully be a lot higher, and we could eventually take out that bond. So thank you.
I recognize your opinion. I disagree with the city directly of advocating funding another political position. I think this
It's
should be
not a political
handled.
position at all. This is for our
Well,
residents.
it's
This is for the
it's an
community.
appointment. It's an appointment, so it is a political position. So we're appointing an individual to a position, and I think something should be done. But I think this should be handled in-house by the city's planning department, by the recreation department, by public works, by the finance department, for the next year or 2 until we can get off the ground exactly what we need to do.
And part,
That's my
and part of that is we don't have the capacity of the city to do that, so that's why we want to look elsewhere. If we were to hire a consultant and pay them $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, because that's how much it would cost,
I don't have.
that's what we'd go for.
I
But
don't
we're
have
going the best route for our residents.
That's all
But thank you.
discussions that we can do in committee and review.
And if
Thank
you
you.
wanted to discuss this further, my committee will 100% be at
Again,
whatever.
colleagues on the council, just remember, this is just a presentation. Thank you very much. Thank
Can I
you.
just make one final
Absolutely.
comment? Just to be clear, most of the operational costs will be paid by grants for various programs that whoever is in this position will be applying for. So the city won't necessarily be on the hook, if you will, for the full financial obligation of continuing to finance the operations. We're looking at quite a different grants. There's grants for a lot of different aspects of what the community center will be bringing as far as programs are concerned. I just want to make it clear. And that's part of getting somebody's idea that is more or less like a grant writer can get those kind of grants to help defray the operational cost.
Thank you, Bruce, Colleen, and Manny. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Presentation by Dr. Michael Klein, Chief Health Strategist on geocoding EMS runs.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear before you today. Before I start, I want to say a special thank you to the staff of the Office on Health, Deborah Navarro, Kylia Benton, Sari Green, and someone who's not staff, but helps us, works for Blackstone Valley Community Health Center, Scott Hewitt, who's running the projector today. They've been invaluable in the work of the Office on Health. The Office on Health, as you'll recall, was established in June of 2016 and works to coordinate the work of the Substance Use Disorder Prevention and Treatment Task Force, some of whose members are with us tonight. It supplies community health workers both to the school-based health center at the high school and to assist in the office, in the work of the Office on Health in supporting EMS. Not too many people know that everybody who gets an EMS run gets a phone call 72 hours later to check on how they're doing and make sure that they have access to primary care. And also runs very sophisticated analysis of data based on EMS runs, some of which we'll present tonight, as well as working on the partnership with Blackstone Valley Community Healthcare which has actually begun the construction of the first neighborhood health station in the United States. If you're driving by Notre Dame sometime, come into the park, or what used to be the parking lot, and you will see many earth-moving machines and a deepening hole in the ground. We expect the steel to go up in October and November, and the building to be essentially under roof by winter, and to be open about a year from now. And that work together is also involved in the multidisciplinary team of the neighborhood health station, which really brings together people from all around the city to work on coordinating the care of Central Falls' most vulnerable citizens. But I want to talk tonight specifically about substance use disorder, which involves opiates and alcohol. Because it's a particularly difficult area of public policy. About 10% of the population is susceptible to either drug or alcohol abuse. About 2 to 3% have it at any one time. And these addictions are very, very, very difficult. They destroy individuals, they destroy their families, and they represent a disease that is very difficult to treat. Most people with cancer respond to chemotherapy in 3 or 4 rounds of treatment. The average person with substance use disorder requires 7 rounds of treatment before they go into recovery. And then that person has to spend the rest of their life working to maintain their recovery, which is a very difficult thing. We estimate that there are 400 to 600 residents of Central Falls who are living with substance use disorder at this moment, perhaps more. Obviously, people don't let themselves be counted. Central Falls does not have a worse problem than the rest of the state. It just has a problem as severe as the rest of the state. But that means 10% of the population is at risk. That means 90% of the population is not that much at risk. And we don't know who's at risk and who isn't, which is particularly difficult because many people find some substance use to be pleasurable. You don't want to take away people's right to enjoy themselves a little bit, but you also don't want to see people sucked into the death spiral of an addiction. And the other complicated public policy issue is that many people generate income by producing, manufacturing, and distributing these substances. And they are often businesses that have high profit margins, which mean they create income for people and they often create tax revenue. Next slide, please. But we as a state face difficult challenges because Rhode Islanders overuse these substances. We are in the top 10th percentile for the use of every substance we know about. Alcohol, marijuana, illicit drugs, prescription drugs, heroin, cocaine, everything we can talk about, Rhode Islanders use more than almost anybody else in the country. Until Colorado legalized marijuana, we were the highest marijuana using state in the nation. Colorado has knocked us off the top, but it doesn't mean we're very high off the top. And obviously we all struggle with a couple of basic facts about supply. We struggle with the notion that marijuana is available in the boys and girls room of every high school in the state of Rhode Island and probably in the nation. We struggle with the notion that heroin and fentanyl now have become cheaper than marijuana. And we struggle with the apparent failure of the so-called war on drugs, which has not been able to contain supply in any part of the nation, despite 40 years of effort. Next slide, please. And just parenthetically, I just want to mention, as marijuana is often discussed, and we try to figure out where to put it in the cosmology of risk in a certain way. Marijuana is not without risk. There is addiction and there is withdrawal. About 8 to 11% of habitual users become addicted. addiction is more likely when use starts in adolescence. The younger kids start, the more likely they are to become addicted. The good news is that the withdrawal syndrome is milder than withdrawal from alcohol or cigarettes. We know that marijuana use adversely impacts the cognitive performance of adolescents and likely contributes to long-term and permanent brain damage when use begins in adolescence. There's lots of argument back and forth about whether marijuana is a gateway drug or not. And I don't think the science supports one position or another, but we certainly know that when use starts in young adolescents, addiction is more likely. The good news, finally, is that there is no marijuana intoxication syndrome and no death from overuse as there are in other drugs. So it is a drug probably most similar to alcohol, though alcohol is probably a little more dangerous, certainly in terms of intoxication and potential death. People die from alcohol intoxication, they don't from marijuana. Next slide. As a state, as I said, just like we have problems with other drug use, we have problems with alcohol use. We are among the most alcohol-using states in the nation. That's no particular honor. Now this became a subject of our focus at the time we put together the Substance Use Disorder Prevention and Treatment Task Force. We got thinking about and working about these issues, and we brought our report to you about a year ago, which you kindly endorsed. But then in our work on EMS drugs last spring, go to the next slide please, we noticed something interesting and a little bit difficult. And I think we're actually missing part of the slide, but I'll talk you through it. We noticed that there's been about a 15% decrease in EMS runs over the course of the last 10, 11 months. But last spring, we noted an increase again. And that increase, the increase in total runs doesn't show up here. But it made us say, what is going on? And so we looked most closely at the EMS runs for alcohol intoxication, and we started to see a bump that started in June and went to July and went to August. And we are on track because these are data from the 15th of July. We're on track to show a very substantial increase in runs from alcohol intoxication. And we began, actually we talked to the mayor and we began to think about what we might want to do and began to think about whether, drawing on data from Europe, whether it makes sense to recommend reducing the open hours of alcohol selling establishments. And Matt, who did the research for us, told us something really interesting. First, that there's statewide preemption, that open hours isn't controlled by the city council, and so it's actually controlled by the state legislature. And then he told us something that we didn't expect, that there's something called summer hours, which you guys may know about, but which I did not, which means that starting June 1st, open hours go from 10 at night till 11 at night, so that alcohol is just more available, and those extended summer hours go until the end of October. So if you want an explanation for why we started seeing more runs for alcohol intoxication, you might want to think about this association between this summer hour situation. When you look up the recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control about alcohol use in open hours, the Center for Disease Control clearly recommends strongly against expanding open hours, and that's something the state did in 2013. So if you want to begin to understand why it is we have, part of why it is we have a problem, part of why we have a problem, I suspect, is our public policy and our public policy around open hours. And just for, because we had access to the data and we thought it might be interesting. Next slide, please. Well, that's just a list of places that have liquor licenses. Next slide. We did an analysis, a geocoded analysis of where these, where intoxications were happening, where EMS was picking people up from. And you'll see in the red dots, those are all the places that people were found intoxicated. And you see how they in fact tend to cluster around places where alcohol is sold. Not anything that should be shocking to anybody, but it shows that as clearly as you can imagine it. Next slide, please. That's just the most recent couple of months. This looks like pretty much, this goes back a little bit further, but it shows the same pattern. Next slide, please. And this is another version of the same basic data, going a little bit longer into what's happened, putting those two data sets together. Next. Sir? Yeah, just keep going as you go through it, looking at specific areas where there are incidents and places where there are licenses. Next. So as a result of this analysis of the data, the Substance Use Disorder Task Force recommended the consideration of two actions. One is to, by resolution, request that the State Assembly delegation try to change the general laws for open hours in Central Falls alone, similar to the change that was enacted last year by the City of Providence, responding to similar pressures. And the other is in terms of the risk of marijuana and the need to communicate people being cautious about their use, considering a 2-year retail ban on marijuana sales in Central Falls by changing the zoning ordinance. And I think those, the resolution and the ordinance is before you. We don't want to be naive about what the state is considering in terms of the state legalization of marijuana. It's unclear whether that will have local preemption or not, but to pass such an ordinance makes kind of it very clear that we are all concerned about use and want to spend devote particular attention to protecting young people against early use, understanding that older people are likely to get access, perhaps in other parts of the state. There's one more slide. This slide just refers to the data from the CDC and its community guide, data that supports the notion that restricted open hours is associated with less alcohol intoxication. That's probably the last slide, or maybe one. And the specific suggestion is to reduce current liquor store open hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., which doesn't seem to be terribly draconian at the end of the day. One more. Again, the modification of the zoning ordinance would put the city on the map in terms of having such an ordinance in place, and would contain a 2-year sunset in case 2 other towns, surrounding towns, don't adopt the ordinance, so it wouldn't disadvantage retailers in Central Falls if other towns adopted a similar ordinance. And just sort of one factoid for the back of everybody's mind, just on the medical marijuana side, not the legalization side, but on the medical marijuana side, there are currently 138 medical marijuana authorizations to Central Falls residents, which means that every single day in Central Falls, today, there is legally 21.6 pounds of marijuana available in Central Falls every day of the week. Just to give you a feel of what we're up against. I think that's it. Questions?
Yeah, okay, just one quick, before we get into the actual resolution, I understand Representative Maldonado was going to introduce this and hopefully into law at the state level, correct?
That's my
And this
understanding.
resolution is to support her bill, basically 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. On the alcohol. So just for your clarification, what the resolution is supporting a piece of legislation, which in fact is what resolutions should do. Resolutions should support legislation, not just willy-willy, you want to paint a fence green by resolution. But this in fact is going to support Shelby's bill at the State House.
If it passes?
If it,
So I have a few questions, as I'm a pretty skeptical math guy as a statistician. One thing I just quickly point out is when we look at the map, there's probably just as much as there is a relationship between alcohol consumption and calling EMS, also one between population density and where the most dots are. So the most dots are also where the most people live, which makes sense. I think that's important to parse out. I did have a question. As far as, we looked at the alcohol use in the past month by state. The South has arguably the least restrictive alcohol laws in the United States, and it has the lowest level of alcohol use in teenagers. And so do you think that by being more restrictive in alcohol sales, that we would lower the number or percentage of 18-year-olds consuming alcohol?
To be honest, I am not knowledgeable about the South's alcohol use. And if I had to guess, I would guess they are way more restrictive. The Bible Belt has had a real impact on people's culture. And again, I don't know for sure one way or the other.
I say it because I'm a drinker, and I've had a few drinks in a lot of these states in Florida, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, all places.
Texas, no laws about it.
Well, I was going to say all places where you can buy alcohol in a pharmacy, you can buy alcohol at a gas station, you can buy alcohol 24 hours a day. And so the reason why I add, and again, getting back to the graph, I think the youth part is important. They have much lower rates of alcohol usage for folks 18 and older than the northern states, which tend to have these, you have to go to a liquor store or you have to go to a separate place.
When the CDC looks for evidence, it looks mostly to Europe. And the evidence of Europe suggests that places that have more restrictive open hours and fewer licenses actually have less of a problem with alcohol intoxication. There is something about our culture in Rhode Island that is promoting drug use of all sorts, drug and alcohol use. And I think the public policy challenge is to confront that piece of the culture and use the levers that we have in public policy to try to speak loudly about the dangers of inappropriate use. And to that end, we've been working on a public communications process that you'll see released over the next couple of months that will try to do that as well. But we are in the middle of a fairly substantial epidemic of opioid and other kinds of overdose death, including alcohol. And in the middle of an epidemic, I think you want to use all the levers at your disposal.
I hear that. And so as a medical professional, my follow-up question is, what do you think the role of government is in this? And it's not, these two specific pieces of legislation, but broadly speaking, what role should government be playing in addressing this?
Well, I think the fundamental role of government is to study and analyze what's happening in the population and report it out, which is exactly what we did. And then to begin to look for public policy and other levers to control the impact of other choices, other public policy choices on the health of the population and individuals. So, in 2013, the state increased open hours. And so, we started to see a jump up in alcohol intoxication. So I think the role of government is to respond to that and to use the levers at our disposal to try to make sure that the public's health is protected.
To be fair, I think you're right on some of the kind of, 7 a.m. I've tried to get out there. You can't find alcohol at 7 a.m. in CF.
But doesn't mean you have to be open at 7.
Fair. No, I think
Most
that's
places
right.
actually open at 9.
Well, my question was going to be, is there anything that leads us to believe, and this was my kind of concern on previous legislation that focused on kind of paternalistic oversight of the government rather than kind of education, is there anything that leads us to believe that if we did this, you wouldn't walk a block into Pawtucket to buy a liquor, right? So I get my drinks on at G's, so to speak, just as easy as I could here in CF on Broad Street, but now my business is leaving and I still get my alcohol.
And I don't think we have science that helps us make one choice or the other. Certainly the science argues against extending open hours, but when we see a pretty strong correlation between when the hours got extended and more transports, then I think it argues for trying a different approach. And remember, I'm not saying prohibition here. I'm not saying go to no open hours, but 9 to 9 doesn't seem to me to be overly conservative. You can imagine a world, there are relatively few products you can buy 12 hours almost every day.
Jonathan, I hope you're not suggesting selling beer at gas stations. I'm only kidding.
Oh, you're kidding me? It's my favorite thing about going back to Miami.
I'm only kidding. Franklin.
So, yes, I can educate the community about the dangerousness of the alcohol. It would be better than force a business owner to close the business earlier, while, like Councilman Costa said, people can go across the street and buy the product somewhere else, taking the business away from the people of Central Falls.
And
my opinion.
I hear the objection. This is my very, very small sample. I talked to somebody I know who runs a liquor store who said, please shrink the hours a little bit, because the only reason I keep them out open so long is because of my competition. It would be easier for me to have the hours shrunk, but that's one person, not everybody.
Anyone else? Mr. Lozette?
Thank you much, Dr. Fine. I was asked if you could make this presentation online and have it posted on the city's website. Some people who are not here would like to access it also.
Sure. I mean, assuming that there's a mechanism for doing that, we're happy to do it.
Dr. Fine, you mentioned at the beginning of your address about the groundbreaking. I missed that. Could you elaborate further?
The Blackstone Valley Community Health Care is organizing, sort of in partnership with the city, not formal partnership, but an association. We've worked together to build this new neighborhood health station behind the old Notre Dame. So that is, we did the actual groundbreaking for it a year ago, and it's moving along, and I think you will see a new building arising where the old Notre Dame used to be.
Are you announcing a groundbreaking? You had a ceremonial groundbreaking a year ago. What is the actuality?
Well, there is now a hole in the ground.
Is it? I don't know.
There's active construction.
That's why I was questioning, because I wasn't familiar that they already started construction.
The construction has begun.
Okay. Thank you.
And you'll be able to see the steel in a month or two.
Be happy to see that.
I think there will be cranes in Central Falls almost as quickly as they got into Providence.
I appreciate that. Dr. Fine, I respect the concern that the country has regarding the abuse of opiates. I'm concerned at combining this concern of abuse of opiates and tying it into abuse of marijuana, abuse of alcohol. My personal belief is that they are separate issues. They have separate ideologies and problems. That is why I'm concerned at your opinions regarding alcohol. I do consider restricting, in opposition to what state law allows, closing Central Falls Class A package stores earlier than what state law allows. I'm against that. As an individual and as someone who has, who represents and supports individual rights, denying that, as we have done in certain other issues regarding alcohol and tobacco and restricting those businesses, I have a problem with. It may seem draconian to you, but for the individual who's trying to raise a family, and that is his investment in the city, his investment in business, those hours are quite important. And those hours, the same hours that have been ongoing in Central Falls for many, many years. They're not something that just been extended. Summer hours have been there for many, many, many years. It's the procedure that's allowed under state law, which allows the liquor laws. And to restrict the hours as you are advocating or through this resolution, I don't support. I would support further expansion of discussions on opioids. I think the state legislature is the primary focus, and I get concerned when cities and towns try to take over local jurisdiction of state issues. I think to make the city more restrictive in some respects than the state allows is a disservice to those individuals. I'm not a drinker. I used to own a liquor store. I do not drink. But for those individuals who would like to drink, to deny them or to restrict them further and further and further, I'm against that. I do not smoke. Never have. Maybe I'll take a water pipe, a cultural smoking at a certain celebration, but I'm not a smoker. I've never bought a pack of cigarettes in my life. But I would not want to restrict or deny an individual their opportunity or their desire to smoke if they want to drink if they want to not to enjoy illegal drugs. I am not a supporter of that. Illegal marijuana. Legal marijuana, as you've mentioned, we have individuals in Rhode Island and Central Falls. It's legal. And I believe in the next few years you'll see state action possibly expanding that legal right to more and more Rhode Island is when it comes to marijuana. I am not advocating it, but I see that's the state function that's happening. So the resolution that we are getting tonight is one that I'm concerned about restricting hours. I'm concerned, I think we need to draw attention on the abuses that the state has recognized. I haven't seen a study for Central Falls that shows that that Central Falls residents are on the highest schedule per capita of abusing alcohol or abusing legal substance. So I'm concerned we reach too far in controlling individuals' preferences and individual legal rights. So that is my comment. I'm concerned that I appreciate you always coming before the City Council to keep us informed and to provide, let's say, what is happening in the city. But I beg to differ on some of your interpretations on legal use of alcohol or other legal substances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? Councilwoman LePay?
This for the solicitor. Is there legislation in place for business owners, liquor license owners to not allow somebody who's intoxicated to be working? I mean, and then I've had to call cops when people walking out of the stores. This is the way they're walking out. So I think that probably needs to be
The one observation is that, you know, I mean, the one association we saw was when summer hours started, there were more transports for intoxication. Make of that as you want, but that was a pretty clear association that we were seeing based on numbers without knowing that summer hours even existed. We started seeing more transports, and we started looking at why that might be.
Just keep in mind, this is just a resolution to support legislation at the state level that's going to be submitted by Representative Maldonado. So let's see what the state does with this, with our support, if we get the support. Everyone's had, okay, Hugo?
Yeah. Well, as Dr. Fine mentioned, that when they increase the hours, you know, the intoxication increase. So we don't know if by reducing the hours is going to help or not. But I think what we should do is work with Dr. Fine. I appreciate your effort for our city and, you know, try to do the best for our city. We should work together with him and find a better way how to, you know, increase the use of alcohol in our city.
I agree, and Dr. Flynn and I are personal friends, and I very much respect his work. I think, you know, speaking to that, we have to move away from, even in our schools, a 1980s just say no to drugs rhetoric with our students, because that's really what's alienating them from the conversation. That aside, I had just two quick things. The first, the summer hours was another one. It's like, what story does the data tell? It's nicer out. You know, people are out and they're drinking more, so you're more likely to get caught outside. That kind of, you know, there's a story there.
But there's a difference between get caught outside drunk and needing transportation by an EMS for intoxication.
That's fair.
That's a whole different ballgame.
I'd like to hear a little more. I think it might be useful because, you know, to your point, Council President, one of them is a resolution, but next week we'll be digging more into the ordinance. And that's something that he's here to talk to as well. If you could speak to the recreational marijuana sale ban. So essentially, we have an ordinance that would make it so that you could not, even if recreational marijuana was legalized in Rhode Island, open a store here. And, you know, from a few angles, one being for me, the business front, right? If someone was a speculator and wanted to invest, this would automatically turn them away. And there have been studies, particularly out of Holyoke in Massachusetts, where some of these old industrial sites that aren't useful for other things are prime sites for some of these businesses to come in. So that would automatically kick us out. The second is that a lot of legislation tends to disproportionately negatively impact poor people, right? And so the increase in cigarette taxes didn't get poor people to stop smoking. They just spent less money on other things that affected their quality of life and bought more cigarettes. And so if we kept it so that people, once we did have access to recreational marijuana, couldn't get recreational marijuana here, would that only fuel the illicit economy here and keep them working with, you know, illegal drug dealers and things like that to get their product?
And obviously, I don't think we can. And the intent of this is not to assume that this is going to stay and stick over time. Because clearly, marijuana not being legal in the state, it's effectively a moot action. But what it does is it says to young people and others in Central Falls, you know, this is an area that we are all concerned about. Be careful. And that's a caution that's worthy of communicating. You know, as I said, right now, this is a kind of no cost to anybody action because it's not legal anyway. So, you know, time will tell when it becomes legal, if it becomes legal, and how that will affect, you know, the illegal economy. There are a number of communities in Massachusetts that have enacted this kind of ordinance. And I think it's for exactly the reason that I laid out. Nobody's, as I said when I started, there is no one, in every high school, in every boys' room and girls' room in every high school in the United States, marijuana is bought and sold. And I don't think this ordinance is going to change that. But it says very clearly that we as a city think that people ought to think twice, particularly when they're under 21. Because it's those kids, those adolescents who are most susceptible to harm from marijuana. And there's pretty good evidence of that.
Thank you. Listening to the comments of the council, it appears there is some concern. So there's a couple of things we can do. We can, the ordinance is just introduction, and we can get further discussion, obviously, next month. As far as the resolution, we can table that. So those are the two things we can do regarding both marijuana and liquor. So that my recommendation is I'll introduce the ordinance by Councilwoman Fonseca, amending the zoning ordinance, just introduction, and we'll have discussion over the next council meeting or two. And the resolution, which is item D, Roman numeral 6, we can just table the resolution. How's that sound? So with that, seeing Dr. Fine just gave his presentation, we might as well jump right to 6A, which is introduction only of resolution by Councilwoman Fonseca. So introduced. Then we can jump to item D, which would be the resolution. Looking for a motion to table. That's a resolution supporting Representative Spill.
Okay. President.
Yes, Councilman.
And if you table it?
The resolution?
Right.
We can pick it up again. Apparently, Jonathan, I believe, suggested that we, and you go, maybe look at this further.
Yeah, and I would like to
Study it further.
Yeah, so individually or we're gonna meet?
Yeah.
That's up to Dr. Fine if he can meet with either or. We can get on that quickly. I can probably get an answer from him tomorrow. And then Sonia can probably email when Dr. Fine can meet. So with that, we've just introduced the ordinance, it's just introduction, but now we're jumping down to Roman numeral 6D, which is a resolution which we're looking to table.
So we introduced 6A.
Correct. It's just introduction. We get time to discuss that down the road.
And then we
Table the resolution supporting.
is there a motion to table?
No, we're looking for
I'll make a motion to table.
a motion by Councilman Zay to table resolution, which is item Roman numeral 6D. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilman Solano. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fine. Oh, you're still here. If you can find a time to meet with council members. Absolutely. I'll check with Sonia. Thank you. With that, I'd like to, Bob Batty, he's been waiting. I'd like to move without objection, tax assessor, and then the gentleman.
Now move the section of new business, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
So item C in new business, which is on page 2, is consideration for tax abatements. And we have city solicitor abatements, we also have tax assessor abatements. So,
Thank you, yes.
Good evening, Council. Bob Batty, Tax Assessor.
Thank you for your patience. I know it's long.
No problem, Council. You should have a list of the proposed abatements before the Council this evening. There may seem to be a lot of them. I would tell you that this is the first meeting the council, since the new fiscal year, or fiscal year has, did begin, so that there always is a tendency to have a substantial amount of the proposed abatements at this time of the year as opposed to any other. Some of the abatements, they're fairly varied. Some of them are very administrative in nature and really just come across because, or happen because of internal keystroke errors and things like that. I certainly am here to, and I have them all in front of me. I can address any one of them individually if you would like. But overall, there is nothing on there that stands out in my mind as being exceptional that would warrant a great deal of explanation. But that being said, I stand ready to address anything you have.
I just have one question. A resident or two had mentioned, anyone that paid their car tax, for example, for the year, do they have to fill a form for an abatement, or do you automatically give them?
No, they will, anyone who has paid anything to the city, where the city is not eligible to collect it, that the refund will be given to them immediately, and we've already started to do it when necessary. They do not have to fill anything out. We are aware, since the passing of the law, when it comes, I assume you're talking about motor vehicles.
Yes, just motor vehicles. And our computer will pick up those that, basically the ones that pay for the year. Now, if you pay quarterly, that will also be picked up and you will deduct it from the next quarter's.
Yes, anybody who has paid more than they should have, has the second, third, and fourth quarters will be adjusted. And when they paid their first quarters, they received 3 additional payment stubs, if you will, that adjusted their payments for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Anyone have questions with the abatements? Yes, I'm sorry. Councilman.
I move to approve the tax abatement submitted by the tax assessor and board of appeals collector.
I have questions, Mr. Chairman. I was yielding to you for questions.
We'll look for a second, then we, under discussion, we have a motion by Councilwoman Fonseca to approve abatements, General Summers. Is there a second?
Which list are you talking about, Mr. Chairman? I have questions on the first group.
Collectively.
You're looking at both?
Then you can ask questions.
Are you looking at item C?
There's a city solicitor.
Yes, correct.
I know collectively. considering
So item
the
C?
motion is submitted by tax assessor, board of appeals, covers
Right.
I and
Correct. Item C?
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer to vote on them separately, separate groups, the first group and then the second group. I have no problem doing collectively on double I, but I do have a problem on first two, Mr. Chairman.
I move to approve the tax
Chairman, I have a
abatements,
motion.
the city solicitor abatements.
Mr. Chairman, you asked for questions, I only...
Are you questioning Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I only relinquished my question because I thought the councilwoman had a question, not the motion. Mr. Batty, I know I met with you last week. I questioned you on the abatements, the General Assembly passing later in the session, after the session ended, the budget which approved an abatement for automobiles, which were not implemented at the time when we passed the budget itself. So tax bills went out for the full amount, and the General Assembly issued an abatement. In general, Mr. Batty, how much is being saved because of that? First,
How much is being saved?
by taxpayer.
Well, the basic change in the law was that any vehicle which is 2002 or older is no longer, is automatically reduced to $500 in value. Therefore, our exemption, which is $1,250, is substantially above that. So any vehicle 2002 or older will pay no taxes to the city of Central Falls.
Because we passed the budget without this change, were those vehicles taxed?
Yes, they were.
So they received a tax bill?
They did receive a tax bill, yes.
If that is the only tax bill that they received, let's say they only own a car that's 2002, they have a tax bill of, let's say, $100, they paid that tax bill, they have no further payments. What is the process in the city is doing, first of all, to educate the public on the tax bills and to reimburse those individuals that have paid it that are not coming up for another payment?
He answered that earlier.
Essentially, what I said before was that the system, the computer system itself, once we work with a vendor called VGSI, who is our tax collection vendor. What they did is we sent out all the bills through them, and then when the law was, the change in the law was adopted by the legislature, the vendor then updated our system to reflect all of the changes that were approved by the state of Rhode Island. So that those people who paid any amount of money to us automatically spit out, if you will, from the computer system, and we refund. If they paid us and they should not have paid us, then they will automatically be refunded their entire amount of money. To anyone who still owes us money after they paid their first quarterly payment, and they, let's say they overpaid by $20 or $30, the situation would be that would be adjusted over the second, third, and fourth quarters. Now, as far as the education is concerned, they are educated when they come to the window and pay their bill.
Mr. Barry, if individuals have leased vehicles, would that, if the lease company made payments when they normally do, make payments on the property in full, is there any adjustment to that?
If the fact would be that the adjustment, if normally the 2002 law would not apply to leased vehicles.
Correct.
Number one. Number two, the state law basically just reduced the value of cars 2002, 2016 by 5%. That 5% adjustment would be given, or would be, if they paid in full, the leasing company, then the money would be refunded to the leasing company. They own the, because the leasing company owns the motor vehicle, it's their money. So
I was asked by somebody who has a 2015 leased car. Payment, the leasing company submits their bill, you submit the bill to them, they submit their payments to you, so that those payments would be refunded to them.
To the leasing company, and it is up to the individual to take it up further with whoever they lease from.
Mr. Batty, we have two.
Mr. Lazier,
Yeah.
this is not question and answer. We're working on is what's before us. Either
That's right.
approve the
You didn't
abatements
ask one question yet, Henri.
regarding the abatements. We do have a gentleman that I have to to take care of. He's got a young baby, so.
I have a question on the second listing, Mr. Batty, you mentioned the double I. These are all statistical corrections. So most of them various.
When you say double I, can you give me an example of what you're referring to?
The Borges, for instance, Luciano real estate, real property, motor vehicle,
I mean,
personal property.
There is a description of the reason for the abatement next to the abatement. In the case of Borges, is an adjustment because of an appeal that the property owner made to me, and through my inspection and my decision, I recommended a reduction in his assessment. That's why it's before you this evening. I mean, that is one particular case. The number of people, the number of appeals that have come in this year is very low. I think there are 4 to date.
That grouping, these are all your reviews and adjustments, not the appeal board.
No, these are all come from my office, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the abatements collectively and double I move for its passage.
I have a motion by Councilman Zed, second by Councilman Fonseca, to approve the tax assessor abatements listed under C double I. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Councilman, you just had a motion to approve the abatements under section C double I. Chair votes aye. And Councilman Solano votes aye. The ayes have it. Nays? Seeing none, hearing none. So moved. Thank you. Now we go to C1, CI.
C1. Mr. Chairman, I did speak to Mr. Beatty regarding CI regarding the property Family Investments LLC, tax year 21686 Washington Street, plat 5, lot 248. I'll discuss that one first.
I think, are those under solicitor abatements?
These are recommended by the,
They're city solicitor abatements.
these are city solicitor or the,
It says city
City
solicitor right above the
Solicitor,
table.
Mr. Lizette, City Solicitor.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You look at the table.
Thank you.
well, I still have questions on those. I thought they were under the,
They're listed under city solicitor
Yes.
abatements, right
but
above the table.
I was referring that they were recommended by the nuisance task force.
Yes.
That's what it's referred to, recommended by the nuisance task force. This is the same situation, members of the council, that I spoke about at the previous council meetings, where we are asking the city council to abate property, the taxes on that property for sale, where individual property owners throughout the city who have received tax increases continually are required to pay their taxes, but we are abating, what was the first one?
Mr. Lizette, I think you put the cart before the horse. Mr. Weber has a presentation. He can give us some background why we're doing this. So if we're going to do his presentation, again, you're putting the cart before the horse. Mr. Weber.
So, property 86 Washington was formerly owned by LLC, Family Investments LLC, that is now defunct. The property is 2 one-bedroom houses and 1 two-bedroom house on the same lot on the corner of Washington and Phillip Street. Just 2 blocks from here. There are 3 blue houses. The story behind the property is that Family Investment LLC purchased them, undertook some serious rehabilitation efforts, cut it to the inside, started work on the outside. The LLC then broke apart. A couple of walked away, leaving one individual with the property. He could not complete the rehab. I guess what eventually happened was the city was faced with a property that was constantly being broken into. It was constantly a thorn in the side of code enforcement, continues to be. I walked here today, it was broken into again, one of the doors was open on one of the properties. Not only code enforcement, the police department's been over there many times. So what the nuisance task force decided to do was put the property into receivership. Receiver was appointed. The one member of the LLC who's still around the area did come to housing court. Essentially, he acquiesced to the receivership. We found a purchaser, Tucker Company, that uses Central Falls Contractors, who has purchased the property and will close on it within 2 weeks if the council reduces payment and begin rehabilitation, which they're given a year to complete. It will probably be done within 4 to 6 months. To address your concern with respect to the $5,000 or so that we're asking to pay, again, with past properties, we've asked this because $5,000, when it might not seem like a lot of money, is prohibitive to our process to tack on another $5,000 to a buyer who's going to be putting in, a good $100,000 worth of investment into the property on top of the purchase price. So, as we've done in the past, we've asked the council to abate the tax, knowing that going forward, as soon as the property is closed on, it's back on the tax rolls. The new buyer will not only begin rehabilitation, but become part of the tax base.
That's the presentation. Anyone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Are we strictly talking about 86 Washington at this point?
Yes.
I used to know the owner of that property. It was taken over by the city. My concern is the same one I had previously, is the city is asking taxpayers to pay their taxes. And when somebody goes bankrupt, normally they have to pay, but with the city's nuisance task force, when they take it over, the nuisance task force is then recommending consistently that we wipe out those taxes. Individuals and constituents of mine have complained to me that why is their taxes being eliminated and evaded and I still have to pay mine? If someone is going to purchase the property, my opinion is the small amount that's owed in taxes, and this is $4,800 added on to the sale, is a responsibility for the property in our city. It's a responsibility that they should undertake and that they should pay. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate the efforts of the nuisance task force. But I would hope that the nuisance task force are able to incorporate city expenses and taxes into their sales in the future. This is, you said $4,800. The next one is $900. And then 606 Dexter Street. I'm not sure.
Well,
606, that's a separate issue. That's not an abatement issue.
I would also add that, I understand your constituents have concerns about taxes being abated, but when you see the progress that's made, for instance, and also to answer your bankruptcy question, we had property at 110 Foundry Street that was addressed by the previous council in the form of an abatement over, I think over 10 times what we're asking for here. That was a property that owners did go through bankruptcy, and when they came out, we still were over, upwards of $50,000 in taxes that we're not getting paid, with a property that's a consistent drain on the city's departments, police, fire, code enforcement. I think that if you ask the owners of other houses on Foundry Street, now that the work is done, they're not so concerned about the taxes that the city abated. The same thing will happen over here.
Not the people I talk to.
It will, addressing this property will raise property values in the area. Directly across the street, PCFT made considerable investments in their newest house in Central Falls. Two doors down, there's more construction going on, not to mention you're less than 2 blocks from this school that we're here right now. It's a hot spot for crime and other types of issues at that property. I think it's a safety issue, and I think beyond that, once the property's done, the president see what the council did for, $5,000, I think it's a good investment.
I move to.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilman.
Collectively, the city solicitor abatements.
Second. Motion by Councilwoman Patsy, second by Councilman Acosta and Councilwoman Rivera to move to approve the abatements under C1. All those, I'll have a roll call vote.
I have questions, Mr. Chairman.
You've had your time.
I only had questions on 86 Washington Street. The councilwoman moved to approve them collectively.
That's
I have questions on the remaining,
one.
which is the remaining one.
It's not a lot.
297 Central Street. Give us a little background on that also. 297 Central Street, it's a 297, yeah. It's a 3-tenement house on Central Street, close to Illinois. The city was able to identify this property before it fell into the type of disrepair and the type of, failure to pay taxes that existed at 86 Washington Street. Citizens Bank owned the property that foreclosed on it a few years ago. They took some time to try and figure out what they wanted to do with it, and eventually, again, acquiesced to receivership. What we have now is a contractor who has agreed to do the abatement work, but also agreed to restrict the sale of that property to a homeowner who will live in one floor and rent out the rest of it. And it's only $900 so that, make this work. Again, that would close within the next 2-3 weeks, and rehabilitation will begin immediately.
Mr. Weber, are you telling me that the Citizens Bank could not afford to pay $900 in taxes?
I'm not telling you that they can't, but if they choose not to, we face the same issue with any other taxpayer. I think that to ask Citizens Bank for $900 for a property that they're already probably going to give up close to $200,000 of the mortgages that they're owed, I think, again, for less than $1,000 to turn a house around with no other investment from the city, I don't think that's much to ask.
I understand that, but that is the same situation as of asking a taxpayer who's on a limited income, who can't afford to pay their taxes, and they have to find a way to scrape up and pay their taxes. My belief to you and to the nuisance task force is that we should be a little more diligent in trying to get our tax payments before we ask for abatements. That's my opinion. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I don't like to see this going on, and I can't support that, but I'd like to see that property turned over. But I think anybody buying the property or a bank selling it, they're on the hook, and they should be reimbursed to the city because they haven't paid anything in taxes for years. So this is an obligation, and I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Mr. Luzier. I don't want to lecture Mr. Luzier, but you just asked Mr. Weber for background information. In your packet, you have a memo on both properties.
Yes.
Yes, I think you should prepare yourself before the meeting and take up all this Mr. Weber's time. You're making him rehash. That's right here in your packet on the memo. With that, could I have a roll call vote regarding passage of approving these two abatements?
Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fonseca? Yes. Councilman Zeta?
No.
Councilwoman Rivera?
Yes.
Councilman Suarez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Robert, for your time. With that, without objection, the gentleman from ABC Liquors, I appreciate, we're going to jump ahead again.
Yes, these are all of the consideration of petition for license. The first one is for ABC Liquor tobacco license.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have the application in front of them? I'll give you time. Madam Clerk, could you read the topic that is for a new tobacco license for record?
Yes, Mr. President, it's tobacco license needed for ABC Liquor at 390 West Street.
Everyone read the application?
A second.
How many do we have right now?
That was my next question. How many do we have?
This is the 19th. This will be the 19th.
This is the next. Any questions of the gentleman in front of us? We just basically want to sell tobacco, and we do have one available. No question? Have a motion? We do have a motion by Councilman Fonseca, seconded by Councilman Israel. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Nays, ayes have it. Thank you so much for your patience. If we would have denied you, it wouldn't have been very nice waiting on this. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Have a private definite renewal application with Augusto Montia Serrano. This is his third year, and it's a renewal.
Just a renewal.
Correct.
I move to approve.
Motion by Councilwoman Fonseca, second by Councilwoman Rivera. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nays? Seeing none, hearing none. Ayes have it. So renewed.
The next license is a constable license. It's also a renewal. Ms. Marlene Montano, Parancillo.
Have a motion by Councilwoman Rivera, second by Councilwoman Fonseca and Councilman Solano. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Ayes have it. So renewed. Next item.
It is a second-hand renewal license for Carmen Cedar Place.
Please, she's here.
She's just a renewal. She's not.
Thank you so much for your patience. Actually, you didn't even have to be here. It's a renewal. Any background on that? Yes,
It's a late renewal, Mr. President.
just to let you know.
Can I ask a location? Where exactly is 1361 Wood Building?
Like, seriously.
On the bridge?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was the AMG and
That's what Bush
Morrow Building.
Yeah.
Morrow?
So we do have a motion by Councilwoman Fonseca, I believe, seconded by Councilwoman Rivera. Any further discussion? All I can say is thank you for your patience. Thank
And
you
if
so
anybody
much.
wants to donate, she's more than welcome to accept donations.
Councilwoman from that.
In the discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Hearing none, seeing none. So renewed. Thank you.
Yes. The next one is a business license transfer for Crown Fried Chicken and Pizza.
Is anyone
No one rights.
Same location, you want?
No.
Yes, this says fast food and tobacco on the bottom.
They do not have a tobacco license.
Each one is 10.
Has Has everyone looked at the application? See any problems at all? No?
Just
Tobacco, right, thinking they have a tobacco, I guess.
No. Could we just call it?
If you are agreeable to it, I can just explain and make sure that the license is not issued. It's something that we always do. As part of issuing the license, anyone comes through is to speak about what the license entails in there. We do not have a tobacco license.
We could approve with the word accepting a tobacco license. So we approve it without the tobacco license.
Well, you have to apply the tobacco license anyway, so they don't have a tobacco license.
As long as they're aware of that, like Maria said, you don't want to open up and start selling cigarettes or whatever. With that, do we have a motion? Motion by Councilman Bonsiglio, seconded by Councilman Costa, I believe. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Nays, seeing none, hearing none. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Next license is sobriety for Golden and Island. It is Dollar General.
We're having another dollar store.
I hope you stick around. Some move in, you move out. By the time you get down the line, that place is closed.
Mr. Chairman,
This is it.
question. Welcome to Central Falls. I see that the Family Dollar has moved out. There was a federal change in law which required them to divest, my understanding. If you could elaborate, and you took over the property, do you lease the property or own it? And my understanding, because I go by it almost every day, the entire building was stripped and you brought in all new equipment. You have another building on Smith Street that I know of, and I'm not sure how many others. Give me a little history. I'm not familiar with your company.
We're based out of Tennessee. A few years back, Family Dollar was purchased by the Dollar Tree.
Right.
And they spun off 320 stores to a different company, investment company. I'm not sure what the name is. They operated the Family Dollars. Those 320 Family Dollars were operated by this investment company for about a year. And then they went bankrupt, and they sold those 320 stores to Dollar General. So that's why we're taking over those 320 former Family Dollar stores.
So they were separate and apart from the other Family Dollars? Because we have...
Still running under the same name.
Yeah.
But they were a different company. They were supposed to change the name to Dollar Express, but that never happened. So now Dollar General is going to take over and change the name.
Okay. Because we had two Family Dollars in Central Falls and one on the border, and Pawtucket, which closed. So this second Family Dollar, the one that just opened, renovated, a lot of money was spent in. You're taking that over. And are you, Dollar Tree is $1 for everyone. What is your philosophy?
Dollar General is very similar to Family Dollar. I like to think of us as a mini Walmart. We have a little bit of everything. We have a great selection, name brand products at very low prices, and very convenient. A small footprint, so it's like going to a Walmart, but you're not in this package store.
But it's not a dollar.
It's not a big dollar.
Not a big dollar. And your hours of operation?
It would be 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week.
Very good. I welcome you and, look forward to your business. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Motion by Councilman Zinn, second by Councilwoman Seeger and Councilman Solano on the discussion. Hugo?
Just one question. Are you keeping the same employees or the same employees?
Employees.
I don't think so.
No?
They could have applied, but, you know, when Family Dollar closed, everybody was laid off down back in June. But if they reapplied, then we would have considered
It
hiring.
would be good to give a priority to Central Falls residents.
Yeah, well, we've got like 10 people hired already.
Yeah.
We're just waiting to open, so we can get them working.
Thank you.
Just so you know, you do get a tax break if you hire a certain number or percentage of Central Falls employees. So you should look into that. I was gonna just ask when you guys are planning on opening.
We're hoping to open tomorrow morning.
What's your minimum wage provided hire?
18 years.
By the way, that tax rate is $1. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nays? Seeing none, hearing none.
President, you got already, I would like to ask another question. How many employees you plan to have in that facility?
Approximately 10.
Thank you. Best of luck. May you see these, you're gonna open tomorrow. And work on it. You gotta see Madam City Clerk. She'll be there at 6:30 a.m.
And the
Next item.
item is an entertainment license for Adams Phillips Library for the event of Mr. Bolts.
Good evening. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your patience also.
Just before, another issue with you all, okay, I live next to 297 Central Street, and I'm glad, okay, some may complain, but I'm glad they're fixing that thing. Then, you know, the nuisance task force in Central Falls developed a relationship with PCFDC, okay, you get those back in the tax rolls, and I think it's a hell of an idea, you know, 5,500, whatever it is, get it done. Okay, Bruce and Books, okay, this is the fun part, right? For those of you who don't know what that is, right, what we do, it's the third year we've had this. We invite craft brewers to come in, okay, and provide samples. We don't sell any beer, we don't serve any beer. They do all of that. They set up on the library premises. It's always indoors, so we don't need a rain date, right? And so, and basically what we do at that point in time is we also conduct a silent auction. People give things to bid on. Right? I give a couple of pretty good seats to usually basketball games if anyone's interested. And, so that's what this is. It's a fundraiser for the Adams Public Library. Okay, it's been pretty well done. And the question I have is, when I talked to the state, this is the first time that I did this, okay, all right? I got in a conversation with the state, and basically on the application that we talked about since we don't sell beers, we don't handle it or anything like that, right? The state told me we don't need a liquor license, obviously, even for beer, okay? The same thing with food, all right, everything is packaged, all right? It's not, it's basically finger food, we don't cook anything on premises, they said the same thing there. The entertainment, okay, I'd like to talk to you about an entertainment license, right? Because basically, we don't do what I would consider entertaining. What we had the last 2 years is a piano and 2 violins. It's basically background stuff to set the mood of the library and just conversation, right? So nobody sings, nobody dances. And I just want to let you know what goes on.
You told me the 4 tops were coming.
Yeah, actually, no. If you look at the application, you'll find the colonel said that there wasn't any detail needed. Okay?
What are the hours?
The hours are, we usually start, we open at 5, but that's usually set up and everything else. Everybody comes between 6 and 10:30. By 10:30, it's fine. Everybody's up.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Casa, second by Councilwoman Fonseca. Under discussion.
Mr. Chairman. I support this, but I only question, I turn to the solicitor to question, because someone is distributing alcoholic beverages, my caution to the library is that a Class F or F1 license be issued, because they are dispensing alcoholic beverages. Now, what would stop an individual on a street corner or a property line distributing alcoholic beverages then? Normally, a city-issued Class F licenses, even if it's not issued to you, it could be issued to the people who are distributing it. That's why my only question is
But my concern is library liability, if you will, okay,
Yeah.
as well. Okay, that's why I went down and talked to the state. This is the first time I've ever gone through this. And basically, it's private, it's, this is.
you're on public property.
No, we're not. It's private.
Yeah, the library is private, but it's, you're allowing the public on to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
That's why
Tom threw it right 10 people to your house and they start drinking. Okay, right? I just want to bring that up. I don't want to get into an argument. All I'm doing is going by what the state told us. Okay?
I'm only questioning the solicitor for you.
Okay.
I want you to be covered. I don't want the library to have any concern, and I have no problem amending the license to issue a Class F or F1 license to cover the library.
Could have an opinion, I guess, Master.
The event is inside the building.
Mr. Monowitz, is your people serving the alcohol here? Is it a catering company?
Is it a catering company? No, it's the brewers themselves. It's not a catering.
Does the brewer have a catering license? I
Uh,
assume they do if they serve other events.
yes, they do.
If you have a catering Class B license, it's an exemption we need for Class F license. That would be for this one.
Yeah, I'll double check that to make sure.
That's
Thank you.
typically the case.
Anyone
That's
else?
my only concern.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. No nays? Hearing none, seeing none. Best of luck, Al.
Thank you. You're all welcome to come. $30. Flyers will be out this next week.
This item is hearing in consideration and possible action regarding the final licensing license holder, Jamie Yipes and Maria Perez, DBA La Moldova, at 674 Dexter Street, in Central Falls.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your patience, Greg. Thank you, attorney. Appreciate it. I told him we could move it up, but we had too many items prior to the liquor board. So we sit as the liquor board, council members. We have a narrative of comments. Question? Yes, Captain.
Yes, sir. Captain, you started telling the truth, the whole truth,
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and occupation for the record.
Captain Craig P. Horton, Falls Police, Captain, charge of the administrative.
And could you state the reasons why you are here today? Please assign the story.
We've been here before with Amalanga, as is shown by this file that we've had since 2013, and still it's up. We had another incident on August 20th at approximately 11 o'clock. Police were called to this location for a large fight, possibly involving a gun. The gun was not, ended up being used or seen to be used. But when we arrived, there was at least 40 to 50 people outside, still arguing, fighting. We started pushing them, moving them along to clear the area. Another fight broke out inside the bar. I had to go back inside. It took approximately 40 minutes to get this entire crowd in the bar under control. This happens to have happened a night, I guess the Mont Longus is the host for Club National, if I want to say it right, which is a club out of Colombia. They host Rhode Island's fan club, and every time they have a game, they usually have a pretty good sized crowd in there. And apparently, on occasion, when we are not there, it's gotten out of hand. And this was another one of those instances. And we've spoken, myself and council and the owners, and of course with your blessing, he has agreed that in the future, hopefully would provide us with a full schedule for the club. Any Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, they will have police details there, in addition to any nights that they're going to have some kind of large event. Because when they have had problems, there was no detail, there was no security, and there was no control.
I'm sorry. You have a rebuttal?
If I can respond. Alberto Ponte Cardona, I represent La Milonga, I've been before you in the past, and I have not had the fortune of being from you for at least a year and a half now, which was the last time that this club had any issue before you. So it has been a while. They have instilled details on regular nights. Unfortunately, during the summer, the business was really slow. That particular night, they didn't anticipate the amount of crowd they had there, and they did everything they could to help and support the police department, ensuring that these patrons were moved along as quickly as they could. With your permission, again, as Captain Pete put it, we're hoping that looking forward, anytime there is going to be a crowd, or whether we anticipate it or not, but on those specific game days, we will be having police detail present there and/or security detail to ensure that these issues don't happen. I would just note that even when the police were there, this particular crowd was somewhat rowdy to officers as well. And not only the staff that was there trying to control them, however, once in the street, they also took it upon themselves not to adhere directly to the police officers' directives either. So it was a situation while we're not trying to minimize my client's conduct. We understand the severity, and it wasn't an issue that we expected, and nor the type of crowd that we usually cater to were expected that night. We did show up.
I just read that, Captain, in addition, how many officers had a be taken down there? Or how many officers had to go through the city?
There was the entire shift was there. That was working that evening, so there was at least 5 of us working that night.
And was our rescue called?
No, not a rescue. I don't even believe it. But there was nobody injured that needed a rescue. Nobody was so intoxicated that needed a rescue. We found cold alcohol bottles outside that were brought out, and one arrest that we did make had a bottle of Vente on that I cannot say it was definitely bought there. Could have taken bottle service. It's highly likely.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to enter the police report into the record. So I should.
Mr. Chairman, can I, as a courtesy to the members of the City Council or to the Board of License Commissioners, may I again ask that if anything is coming before this body to review, to discuss, a hearing, a presentation, that we receive the documentation prior to the meeting. You're presenting the police report. We have not received it. There were presentations tonight. We were not presented the documentation prior to the meeting. I think the documentation should be presented prior to us meeting. This is just one example. I asked that the courtesy be given to the council members at the time of the agenda being distributed, that we have the documentation to investigate, to research, to ask questions. I am not particularly addressing this issue. I do have a question later, but regarding documentation, Mr. Chair.
I just have half hour ago, we had memos in front of you never read regarding property.
I never
We had
got it, Mr.
applications.
Chairman.
I didn't either,
I
but,
never got it, that's what I'm saying.
but you're talking like you don't get any information on anything. You don't need it anyway. I'm not sticking up for it, I'm just saying.
I do.
Tom, you don't, we had 2 memos regarding
Mr.
property.
Chairman, I asked questions.
Point of order
I
is
asked
correct.
questions
Point of
because
order
of
is
people
correct.
who are here, who want to hear the
Point of order,
details.
please.
I may know it on the reading, but people who are sitting here, my constituents who ask me what's going on with it, if they don't hear the details that I bring up, they're at a loss. That's why I question certain things. But we should be receiving these documents prior to tonight's meeting.
It's called, listen to the officer, listen to the attorney,
Documentation.
listen to the officer, listen to the attorney. Thank you. Anyone else?
And me.
But I just want to echo what Councilman Tom Zia mentioned too about that. I don't have that document here too, but I have one question. So this fine was on August 12th, right? It was inside and outside?
August 20th.
20th, okay, sorry. And how late was this fight?
Approximately 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. 10 of 11.
10 to 11. See, going back to what Dr. Fine said, if we close this at 9, it's going to happen right now. So, we don't, it's a bar, right? Bar and restaurant. Okay, take it back. All right, thanks.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So within the last year and a half, this is the first time they were called, police was called again?
I don't know the last time they were before the board, I believe it was, yeah.
But even before coming before the board, have they been called, have the police been called previously within the last year on this business?
In the last year? Give me a moment,
I just put on the record, I would suggest that he could be considered here as part of the issue before the board.
I would reject your objection just based on how big that folder is.
Because I would ask for the police detail every week if they've been called previously within the last year.
Well, that's it, it does appear,
This was again, last year, if I remember right, because we had details after this incident in October because of the Club National doing very well in the playoffs. And that's when we had fireworks out in the middle of the street in October. And then we had, I guess they had one big match. And this is another night that Steelers was not there. And then we had details in there after that. And I don't know if it was based on sanctions from you or if it was based on agreement between the police department and Steelers. I'm not sure. I just know we were there after we had that incident in October, based on another soccer game with that same team.
If I can respond, with respect to my objection, if you're going to go back to, there's things that are 3 years beyond the time period, which cannot be considered by statute. So that's the first issue I would take. The second issue is this organization has complied, worked with the department, the police department going above and beyond on occasions to ensure the quality of life of the citizens of this city, as well as the safety of the patriots and the citizens of the city.
Anyone else?
yeah, that's 11 months, it's not 3 years. That said, I appreciate that you guys have a good working relationship with the police department. I would hope that you don't need us to put on additional measures. So my question for you then is, if this happens again, say in the next 11 months, what should be our response?
With all due respect, Mr. Councilman, that's the purview of the liquor board. I believe that each situation is different depending on the situation and why the police are called there. If there's an issue and the patrons are acting up and we call for assistance, that counts as a response by the police department, which this board on occasion has, whether it's this bar or some other bar in the city, that counts against them. So if they go ahead and try to enforce by contacting the police, I don't know what your response should be at that time. If they're doing the right thing, they're trying to resolve an issue with two patrons who just don't get along. This is a 1.23 square mile city, Temperance Run. And when you look at the situation, that specific situation, at that specific time, 11 months from now, then we have a better idea of what should be done on that particular issue.
I'll say, and this is speaking personally, that one, being a fan of the soccer team, we know when the games are going to be. And so you have, decisions that you're able to make. And two, please believe that the next time I will not trust you guys and your relationship with the police officer as enough recourse for adjusting the situation.
And it's also my understanding previously that they would have police detail Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when the team was playing.
I don't believe that they would have every Sunday. There were certain issues that required detail. We provided those details even as a security company on nights when there's not even games there. As again, I say, this summer was a tough summer for them. Business was slow. They did not anticipate the problem. That was a bad business decision. We'll agree on that. But they immediately did everything that was asked of them by the police department who was responding. And they'll continue to do what is required of them by the police department and or this board. But to make an accusation or a comment like you just did, Mr. Councilman, that my only retort would be if the board feels that they are pointing to something that if we're back and forth, we're going to take certain measures, then I would just allow that we would take whatever recourse is necessary, including appealing the decision by this board.
Captain, what is the recommendation of the police department? Does Colonel make a recommendation?
Colonel, the recommendation is for details of any Friday, Saturday, or Sunday evenings when this club is playing, and/or any other major event, like if they're going to have a major boxing event or some type of event on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday evening, that the police detail is required.
So this wasn't a one-shot deal where it was a tournament, and this is every weekend they have soccer games?
They play once a week.
Once a week for how many months?
In the game, they end the tournament by December.
And presently, those weekends you do have detail, correct?
I have a security company.
Your own?
Security, yeah. I got Friday and Saturday. Now I agree when the soccer games, I can call the police.
And you didn't do it this year, correct?
We did the past. I was on vacation during this event. My partner was on summertime and August. He was really quiet, he was dead. So he didn't know it's not the time out.
And going back, Captain, to the police recommend our detail or their detail is okay?
On Friday, Saturday, or Sunday evening, we would be on detail.
Our
Police department.
Okay.
Police department would be working on detail now.
Not
in addition to others. Yeah, when the games are being played.
Again, with your permission, the board's permission, if you would approve it, we have agreed with the captain that if there is a game, and we do know ahead of time, we'll share that schedule. Mr. Evans has, again, before with this, he can sit down with the captain meetings and go over what that schedule is, I'm sure, even a couple of weeks or months in advance, that police detail, along with the security detail, is there, given the incident that the side of the problem.
That's what I was driving at, what detail, and they will know well in advance when this quote special event happens.
President, Wednesdays and Sundays.
Wednesday, Saturday.
You play this Sunday.
Yeah.
On Wednesdays.
But Wednesdays is, I mean, not many people show up on weekdays, so I think
President,
Franklin.
just have a question. So you requested that when there is a game or you have a major event, there will not be police detail.
as well as the security. Last night, the guy flies and Saturdays anyway.
It appears both parties have agreed.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Jose.
I see that I took up by your establishment and I do see security at nighttime sometimes. I know there's been changes. Could you explain what you are doing to your building? I see that you've changed the front of your building. Are there any other changes inside that we should be knowing about?
Well, there is a program that the city has with the
Storefront?
small business. They pay 70% and we pay 30% to feed the fund. My goal is to change more the bar to a restaurant, so we make big windows and hopefully in the future we don't have this kind of problems.
If I could
So you're,
speak on that, that's the facade improvement program that we have.
Oh, super, that's
And so, it's the facade improvement program that we have. Our architects have been working with Mr. Nieves, and we agreed that a design with larger storefront windows was the route to go, because if you've seen it in the past, has these really tiny, small windows, it's hard to see in. With larger windows, it's more inviting, more open, more friendly, and just a style of architecture that most main streets have. And so that's something that we can work with.
Thank you.
and I mean, you're changing the windows. Are you changing other things on your establishment? Are you expanding your restaurant menu? Are you doing other things? Are you changing atmosphere from a bar to the restaurant, you said?
We're gonna increase the menu. We have a Mexican restaurant and we're gonna try to change all the furniture, everything inside after they finish it outside.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any motion?
Based on the request that they have, and the police and the owner and the attorney are all agree in the same point, I make a motion to approve.
Motion to not penalize, perhaps.
Exactly, making a motion to approve the recommendation of the police department.
We have a motion to accept both parties' agreement, basically, no penalty tonight. Anyone, we have a second?
With that, how long is that time?
So
No,
the
I
next,
want to put a timeline on it. Can we say a year, 6 months, a year?
We would agree, going forward, to review this in a year, if the board were interested in doing that. That anytime, not just the soccer games, not just, if there's a fight, my client's gonna come over to show. If there's an event that he's gonna show with the president. He's trying to work with us. He's invested a lot of money in that building, invested a lot of time in this community. He wants to be a good business. Unfortunately, sometimes when you cater a certain crowd, it's difficult. So with the court's permission, we can be back here in a year to review what has happened, and we'll continue any large event that is going to draw a crowd of this magnitude. We'll agree to have both police detail as well as the security company that's on that really insured, so that's what we have.
So there would have to be amending the motion. You have to.
Correct.
Motion.
with the time on it. So the motion would have to include, for example, 1 year or whatever.
So at this point, I would like to withdraw my motion and make a new motion, approving the request that they have, and they will come back in a year to review what's going on in that place.
That motion by Councilman Solano. Second by Councilman Duro. Any further discussion? So the agreement is 1 year. So both agree? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Hearing none, saying none. Best of luck.
Thank you, gentlemen, and ladies, for your time.
And I'd like to move to 606 Dexter Street. Mr. Weber is also waiting patiently all night. That's in your packet. Everyone should have the narrative in the packet for 606 Dexter Street.
Oh, that's
the Union Law building.
That's the building.
That is correct.
then I think Mr. Weber is here to also speak on the resolution before it.
Was it said there?
So we can take both of them while he's talking to us. Sorry. Mr. President, would you like?
606 Texas Street, I believe.
Yeah, 134.
Yeah.
Briefly, 134 Perry Street, the land swap, that is to do with the Veterans Playground at the corner of North Street and Illinois Street. We were approached by the developer who asked if we could work out a deal with the landowner at 134 Perry Street, directly behind the park, essentially to complete the landscaping on the hill that's behind the park. In order to do that, there was another portion of unbuildable land that was not being used by the park that the city owned. That's adjacent to 134 Perry Street, and the suggestion was made that we just swap these portions of land. Where you have before you are quick lane deeds that have been executed, along with a map depicting what portions of each lot are going to one to the city, to the owners of 134 Perry Street. It's only a few hundred square feet of land going either way, but it's just was suggested by the park developer to acquire that land to beautify the park essentially.
And if you look at the map, it also finally makes a straight line in that area.
Yeah, so actually what really happened is the land swap just kind of makes official what was already there. It was kind of a natural boundary with trees and shrubs that was already existed. Now we're just putting it down on paper.
And a motion by Councilwoman Pacheco. Second by Councilman Figueroa.
Question?
Yeah, on discussion, I just wanted to, this is 134 Perry Street. Okay, if Tom, if you're on Perry Street, it's basic, it's right behind where the park is being built.
I like that, yes.
Yeah. Everyone familiar with that? You know, Perry Street. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Names, hearing none, seeing none. So moved. And the next piece of property, I believe, is 606 Texas Street.
Before you have a resolution which would allow the city to execute a purchase and sales agreement to buy 606 Dexter Street. It is the property on the corner of Richardson Street and Dexter Street, near the Capitol Farms, a couple doors down from Village Pizza. Kind of a unique situation. We have a nuisance property that multiple code violations exist. Over the summer, there were multiple warrants executed at the property. Believe it or not, these issues existed through two different owners. The most recent owner, the city contacted to address these nuisance issues. And when they did that, the owner kind of floated the idea to us, well, I'm willing to sell. It was pretty clear to us that what his terms would be, what he owes on the property. And, at that point, which was only within the last few weeks, we began to try and nail down exactly what we could do with this land. I think it's a unique opportunity that the city has to purchase this property on Dexter Street, where there's a lot of work being done, obviously, with the site improvement program. Just, like I said, 2 buildings down, Village Pizza is in the process of buying 636 Dexter Street. That should close sometime in October. That would be another building on Dexter Street that's going to undergo significant improvements. I think the plan as of right now would be to purchase this property, have PCFD come in, demolish it, and build a mixed-use commercial storefront and apartments above. Kind of up in the air as to what the exact plan would be. We would, of course, have to come before the council a second time to approve a transaction between the city and the PCFD. The council would then get a real concrete plan of what we can do there. Just for the council's, just for your information, right now what we have is a tentative project schedule based on whether or not we can get this approved tonight. Essentially puts our range of when construction would start and be done somewhere in 2018 or 19. But that all depends on now with funding schedules and things like that. That's why we're in kind of a rush to do this. But I think that it's probably, like I said, a unique situation where we can really affect Dexter Street as a whole by addressing this property, and as we know, a couple of other properties that we address currently. It is $225,000 that we're asking for. It's not a small amount of money, but I think the investment will be worth it once the construction's done. In conjunction with these other projects that are going on Dexter Street, I think it's really going to raise property values. I think it's really going to pick up that street, and really an area of Dexter Street that is exploited at this time. The appraisal that was done on the property, the appraiser actually pointed out that right now it's a residential property. He pointed out that the cost to turn it into a commercial property for the average buyer would be prohibitive, which it would remain essentially what the appraiser is telling us is that it would remain a residential property, probably the same condition it is now, in perpetuity, unless someone steps in with a large investment. So that's where the city's trying to step in to try and kickstart this action, really turn around that portion of the street. So that's where we are right now, looking for approval to purchase this property. $225,000, that's the verbal agreement we have with the seller. He has forwarded us a P&S that I told him that, obviously can't be executed until we get the approval, but that's what we're asking.
Any question? Councilman? The question I would like to ask is that, so it's to buy this property for $225,000, but then that property will be demolished?
Yes. So the property right now, the issue is really that someone, whoever owned the property previously, basically took the existing commercial area that was in it and the apartments and kind of just really cut them up into cookie cutter, one-bedroom apartments. It doesn't really make much sense as you walk through it. It would be incredibly difficult to rehab the existing structure along with the garage that's behind it. So it's really, to do what we're trying to do, demolition is
It's been an eyesore for years. Is it vacant finally? They throw the tenants out because
It is vacant.
I noticed not as much activity on Market Street on the
Yes.
sidewalk where they used to be there all day drinking and who knows what. This is a plus.
So the current owner took control of the property sometime in July. Through August, he had been vacating the property, so it is
Can we negotiate this price better? I mean, we're gonna buy a property that is vacant, and we're gonna pay $225,000 just to demolish it?
Well, I think as far as negotiation and if he's vacant, I think that's actually on the plus side for the city that it's already vacant. We want to be in the business of moving tenants or having tenants. So I think that the fact that the owner did that is actually a positive note for the city. With respect to the purchase price, what we're doing is essentially giving the current owner, making him whole, because he currently owns around $210,000, $215,000 that he put into the property in the past month, or two or 3 months now. So yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the best deal we're going to get. The appraisal is $215,000, it's only $10,000 over the appraised value. As a commercial property, which we're trying to get into, would be worth much more. But, right now it's residential, and I do think we're probably at the floor with respect to the purchase price.
To demolish this is gonna cost probably more than $200,000 too, right?
No.
Because I know one of the property costs like close to $300,000. Sylvian, no? Any idea how much?
Oh,
I know one
yes.
costs more than $200,000.
There was it was around $100,000 to demolish Pleasant Street. That was because there were underground storage tanks. So that put up the price a little bit. Also with the power lines, where there were a couple different factors that drove the price of that demolition up. To be honest, I haven't gotten a demolition quote on the property, so I don't want to speculate, but I don't think it's going to cost more to demolish it than it does to purchase it.
Anyone else? Mr. Joseph.
First, let me ask, what is the official zoning of this parcel? It's a mixed use, well, it's a residential right now, but is it a commercial zone?
It is a commercial zone, it is a mixed-use property.
But it is zone commercial,
Yes.
so it is a commercial property.
Yeah, so at some point, the previous owner took the steps, and if you look at the building from the front, it's very clear that it used to be storefronts
Correct.
that were kind of poorly turned into residential.
I preface my comments because this is a commercial property. I talked to you earlier about this. It is a nuisance property. I agree with that because I go by it every day and I know the people that hang around here, sit in the doorway, and who knows what they're doing, but it is a problem. My concern is that, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting regarding properties, we are paying premium dollars to investors for this property. $225,000 for this. It's not a nice piece of property, but $225,000 is a good amount. And then there is going to be another expenditure of $50,000, $60,000 for the demolition. Are we going to expend those funds, or are we going to transfer it to PCP with PCFP, or whatever another name is, and are they going to demolish the property? Is the property going to be taxed? These are all concerns. Are they applying for any abatements? The question is then, how much is the city going to continue to lose on this property?
Can I ask the table this whatever you need more answers? So that we get to that.
I don't want to speculate too much with respect to future costs. I know that right now what we have in front of us is, $225,000 for a prime piece of realty on Dexter Street. It's not a building that's in great condition. It's not.
It's not really prime.
But I would also inform the council that when we did have a conversation with the prior owner over a year ago, and the price was almost $100,000 more at that time. So we are getting it is a better buy than what we had offered to us, over a year ago with this piece of property. But with respect to who's going to demolish it, that just hasn't been decided yet. With respect to any abatements, right now there's no money owed to the city, taxes or otherwise on this property, so I don't see the abatements being necessary.
But do you understand my point that what is the plans of this, and ultimately, what is this going to cost us? And what are we getting out of it? It's not even going to be a city property, it's going to be turned over to the corporation. So there's a lot of various questions, and the cost, as we've seen in other properties in the city, we are quoted one cost, and as time goes on, the expenses add up more and more and get greater and greater, such as the one on Illinois and Summer Street. We still don't even have the final amounts on that, and we're still putting money into it. But I don't want to go into a sinkhole.
Have Linda Weisinger here from Douglas Center Falls Development who might be able to answer some more of these questions for you.
Just one quick, do you know what the books, what it's appraised at, on our books at City Hall?
What tax?
215?
265.
265.
Do you know how much taxes are paid on that property?
I don't know what the yearly tax is on.
Good evening. Hi.
Linda, thank you for your patience.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to attend today's meeting. So I'm Linda Weisinger, I'm the Executive Director of Pawtucket Central Falls Development, also known as PCFD, PCF Development, so that's who we are. We merged with REACH in 2014, so 3 years ago. So we're proud to have the name Central Falls as part of our development corporation. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We develop homeownership opportunities, rental opportunities, and commercial opportunities as well. So what we propose here, so a little history. So recently we developed a house across the street at 95 Washington Street. That was a vacant lot for many years, blighted before that. And we built a home ownership, so single family home right there. New family lives in there, so they're very happy. We're also working right now at 63 Fletcher Street, which is one of the nuisance properties in the city, top nuisance properties in the city. We're building another home ownership 2-family house there. So we're committed to Central Falls. Exactly. So for 606 Dexter, what we're looking to do is a new construction building, mixed-use building, mixed-income building. We're proposing 2 commercial storefront properties and 8 residential apartments above. And about 2,500 square feet per floor. So we're going to really make a nice new building, open up the facade, sort of glass storefronts for 2 small businesses, hopefully Central Falls businesses. And we feel it's the right design in terms of scale with the property and surrounding properties. We have several funding sources, including Building Homes Rhode Island, which is, if you remember last fall, that there was an affordable housing bond that was passed, and the application's due in about maybe a few months, so about 8 weeks or so. And we like to include this property as one of the applications to be submitted. There's also some Central Falls CDBG money and a private mortgage. So there's multiple sources, multiple layers of financing to make this deal happen. It's about a $1 million project, about $1.1 million. So it's significant investment for the commercial corridor and a really great prominent location on Dexter Street.
Taxable?
Yes. So it's not tax exempt, depending on layers of sources that we use. Yeah, I mean, it's taxed. We pay taxes on our properties. We own about 69 units total in Central Falls right now. We pay taxes on them.
So I move to approve.
Okay, a motion by Councilman Patsy, second by Councilman Rivera to approve. Any further discussion, Councilman Costa?
Question, where in the process would, so the resolution states, which is obviously that we plan to purchase the property, we purpose to sell it to the PCFDC. Where in this process do we essentially sell it to them?
So, how I envision this right now is to execute the PNS with the buyer now, finalize construction plans, funding sources, timelines with PCFD. Once that's done, then we have a firm plan to bring to the council. We would bring that to the council along with purchase and sales agreement to PCFD.
So with that, are we responsible for the demolition or would they?
We have not decided that yet. I think either way, I'd have to come back to the council and ask for that money. If you denied us, then we'd have to work that out with PCFD. But yeah, I mean, I apologize, it's just not that far along in the process. But in any event, you have to approve any spending that we do. And like I said, hopefully it kind of comes together as one package when we have the purchase and sales agreement for you guys to approve.
I made it ask because I think we would have to be asking that fellow councilman's concerns.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
This is your second part of the
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's the first time on the motion, Mr. Chairman. The motion as it is to support the resolution. As you say, you will come back before the council. The resolution doesn't allow that. This resolution states the city council hereby authorizes the mayor, the city solicitor, and the administrative finance officer to negotiate and execute the purchase of the property located at 606 Dexter Street, subject to the following conditions. The city conducts an appraisal and does not purchase the property for more than 125% of the appraised value. And secondly, the purchase is completed within 30 days of funding being approved. At no time does it give the council the vote to come back to approve the sale.
Council, what he's referencing is that a sale to PCFD would require council approval.
Yes, but the sale of this would also, does not allow the city council to review the final facts before it's purchased. We do not get the final details on what this
Mr. Weber
purchase is.
was stating was that phase 2, as they develop the PCFD, they have to come back to the council for that approval.
That's for the phase 2.
That's correct.
We do not have the same in phase 1 with.
We do.
This is the same. This is phase 1.
We still don't know the final details. Who's going to take care of it?
So I asked to table it, nobody wanted to second the motion, so are we going to vote or are we going to table? It's one or the other, because we're just going around. It's 9 o'clock, we
My
have
preference is
residents
to
in the building.
You made the
Wait,
motion.
we have a motion.
Okay, nobody seconded.
It happened too quickly. We were still in
Okay,
discussion.
can we vote, please?
Seeing it's a purchase, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Yeah, with respect to, if I could, sorry, with respect to tabling the motion, we
We're not
had.
tabling it.
Okay.
No, we've already got a motion to approve, roll call vote, seeing it's a purchase.
Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fonseca?
Yes.
Councilman Zay?
I cannot at this time.
Is that a no?
That's a no at this time.
Councilwoman Rivera? Councilman Solano?
Yes.
Motion
I'd
carries.
like to clarify my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We already taken a vote. Thank you for your patience, Linda, Robin, thank you for your patience.
Mr. President, we are back to item C, in the schedule of bills, which is item B, I apologize. An ordinance amending chapter 36, traffic and vehicles. This is your second reading.
I think that.
There was no one signed up for a public hearing.
Thank you so much for your patience also.
No problem.
I owe you a half a cup of coffee, I'll split it with you. There you go.
My name is Elaine Partridge. I'm the Director of Public Works and Code Enforcement. I'm asking for your support on the traffic and vehicles ordinance. Through the nuisance task force, I found that we have a serious problem with unregistered cars in the city, and I needed a tool to be able to work with to address this issue. And I believe this ordinance will do that.
Second.
I just have one question, I think there's a double thing here. On page 7, item B, any operator of a motor vehicle under 18 years old shall properly wear a safety belt and/or shoulder harness system. This subsection applies only to those motor vehicles required by federal law to have safety belts. Now, if you turn the page over to page 8, under section E, I think it says the same thing. Any person who is an operator of a motor vehicle shall be properly wearing a safety belt and/or shoulder harness system as defined by federal motor vehicle safety standards.
One is for children, one is for adults.
No, that's, I don't think so. Can you clarify?
So the only thing changed in this ordinance is on page 9, which addresses the,
Right, we're not changing this part, but I thought when I was at it, I was reading.
No, one is for children, one is for adults. If you read B, it says any operator, and then it goes on, attain the age of 7 but is under 18. Whereas the other one is just blanket.
Yeah, keep reading. Any operator of a motor vehicle under 18 should properly wear a safety belt.
Yeah, the point, you could be 16 and 17 and operate a motor vehicle.
But you have to wear a safety belt.
Exactly.
Right.
The other one is for
Okay, now,
adults.
I'll flip the page and define, C, E.
Okay, that's for adults 18 and up. The point was the other one is 18 and under.
Don't, it's just semantics, I can see on E, it's probably right. It's no big thing, it doesn't reflect what's in front of us, but I thought when I was at it.
So I do have a question which I brought up last time when we introduced, which is how we distinguish, and I commend your efforts, I appreciate the fact I called your office because I had an issue with an abandoned car in a property. My only wondering is how we differentiate between folks who say are like car enthusiasts, so they're building a car, or they're tweaking a car or working on it so it may be inoperable while they have ordered an engine or something like that. Between those and a true nuisance where the person is clearly abandoned.
so the people that are actually car enthusiasts, most of them will cover their cars. If it's in the yard, it's covered and it's neat, we wouldn't probably bother with. It's the ones that are torn apart, parts all over the place, it's been there for 3 years, it's all rusty. Those are the issues that I'm trying to address.
And also, don't they have reasonable time anyway, or reasonable explanation?
Absolutely.
If they're cited, and maybe if what Jonathan just said, he said, look, I'm a car enthusiast and I'm waiting for a part, I would think that's an acceptable reason.
We work with everyone.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, you know, we sit down with them, and if it's a reasonable explanation, you know, we're very reasonable in code enforcement.
What is your pleasure?
The motion's already out, I think we're just gonna vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so no other, okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Perry?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fonseca?
Yes.
Councilman Jose?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rivera? Councilman Solano?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Actually, I didn't.
Sorry for waiting.
You jumped around a few times, I didn't see you anymore, but until Elvis had
I didn't
left.
see you.
Elvis left the building. He was sitting over there at first. Okay, next time.
She's up again for the ordinance creating the road paving and utility accountability act of 2017. The next item.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, this is the ordinance that the law intern gave a presentation to the council about at your last meeting. Manuel Gonzalez, and he submitted a memo, and he actually found a couple more tweaks and has submitted, I believe Sonia has copies to pass out, a sub A2, which clarifies the definitions for the council's consideration.
It's on everybody, I put it in front of everyone's seat, right there, just to figure it out, right there. It says sub A2, and it was put on your seat prior to your arrival.
So me too. Can you explain the difference?
So Mr. Gonzalez outlined these differences the last presentation he made in council, but I'll just briefly go over them. The first change is in the definition sections. Just a lot of the terms that we use were not defined in the ordinance, and so he fully defines each term. Second change is under the permit required section, more fully outlining the process by which the utility applies to DPW, speaks to the police department, arranges the detail, and the excavation occurs. And this was, I think, as Mr. Gonzalez stated at the last meeting, was done after researching what Cumberland, Lincoln, East Providence, Kentucky, and other cities and towns do as best practice. The next section outlines that we put on the city's website on a regular basis the roads that in which DPW feels in the near future with proper resources could be paved.
That's important.
And then based on that plan, if the utility decides to give them notice, we're looking to pave the streets so they have time to do all the work underground before we pave it. If we then do pave it and they try to cut into it, they have an obligation then to do curb to curb, block to block. In essence, those little squares will be a thing of the past. They have to actually repave substantial portions. And that's really where the word accountability comes from, so that they feel a real sense of accountability that if they're going to cut into the Central Falls streets, there's a price to pay if they don't plan ahead.
Motion to approve the ordinance creating the road paving and Utility Accountability Act of 2017, Sub A 2.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Costa, seconded by Councilman Figueroa.
Council, we have to substitute sub A to
Sub A.
sub A, and then do a motion for the substitute.
Motion to approve the amendment.
Second.
Motion by, I think they might have to take, they have to take back, the gentleman has to take back that motion, I believe.
I withdraw my motion.
And so you go to draw the second. For the record, Madam Councilman Costa and Councilman Figueroa withdrew the motion. Now we have a motion by Mr. Lazier.
I make a motion to approve creating the ordinance, creating the road paving and utility accountability act of 2017, sub A 2.
That's a replacement for.
This is an amendment. We're going to vote on the amendment first.
Right. And I understand, we have a motion by Mr. Levin, second by Mr. Acosta. Further discussion, everyone understand what we did? We had our inserts.
I would like to ask a question to eventually. During the paving on the different roads here, I noticed that the way they is carving the road, it was like too thin, but nobody from DPW was inspecting anything. And there was part that was like 3/4 of an inch, which is making, I mean, the road are beautiful, everything look nice now, but I noticed that there a lot of roads are being cracking down too soon, and how we gonna prevent that in the future going forward?
The only way to prevent that is to actually replace the road. You actually have to dig it out, put in gravel, compact it, and pave it. Very, very expensive. That's the only way to prevent that. What we did was cold plane and just resurface. You have to do an actual brand new road.
But when we are doing that, do they have some kind of, how deep they should go? I mean, when they are coming and get repaired again, do they have to have 1.5 inches, 1 inch or something like that? Because
The least amount they cold plane is 1.5 inches.
they didn't have that.
Well, you can't, it's impossible to get 1.5 inches over every part of the road because the roads are uneven.
I understand that.
So what happens is some parts of the road are cold planed somewhat deeper, others are now a little bit less, and it's impossible to control. But if you want a perfect road, you actually have to dig it up, down quite a bit, gravel, compact it, 2 layers of asphalt. You're talking extremely expensive. I mean, I wish I had the money to do that. I wish I had the money to make everything perfect, but we don't. So we're doing the best we have with what, best we can with what we have.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call vote.
Councilman Pettit?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilman Lozay?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera? Councilman Sawala?
Yes.
Motion to approve as amended.
Motion by Councilman Acosta to approve as amended, second by Councilman Lazier and Councilman Figueroa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, roll call vote.
Councilman Pettit?
Yes.
Councilman Acosta?
Yes.
Councilman Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilman Lozay?
Yes.
Councilman Rivera? Councilman Sawala?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. I go by there at 5:06. Leave a copy at the door. It might be cold.
Thank you.
And,
Mr. Chairman?
you want to break?
No, I'm going to ask to recess the meeting. I have other things to discuss, and it's going to take a lot longer than I think people want to stay. We still have further things to do. I asked to recess to move the meeting to the next available date or as soon as possible, and you can arrange.
That's fair.
Try to be,
Everyone else is, we are 9:19 right now.
Do you want to get to the resolutions? I don't think any of them are particularly controversial. Most of them are congratulatory or declarations of stuff. Even I particularly like to have a document on this month's.
You want to recess until, not next month, the following Monday? And then we have to come back, of course, the second Monday in October.
You can even meet on a separate date.
Sure, we could, yes, we can meet during the week.
Well, yeah, do you guys want to do the resolutions real quick?
Nothing, I don't think, how many are left? Is there?
We have 4. Yeah, then the other stuff we can just push.
There's not much left other than condolences and.
Well, no, there's the National Grid thing and then the executive.
I have a,
Where do you think you want to, what are you talking, on the condolences, on the resolution?
well, the condolences haven't been listed.
Right.
I do want to talk on that, and I do have other issues regarding financial
Okay.
that I've requested to be put on the agenda. I have questions regarding the officers' reports. I have questions regarding the federal bankruptcy. I have questions regarding
But
the
that's
budget.
supposed, that's not before us.
I requested it to be placed on the agenda. If it's then not, I will address them during budget reports. You know, I respect, Mr. Chairman, I request things to be put on the agenda and you purposely do not put them on.
What did you,
Point of order, can we do the resolution?
yeah, what, I don't know what you're talking, what you requested that didn't come out.
I requested Representative McLaughlin came here for a resolution or a public hearing on
Requested a workshop for the retirees. Would you like to chair a workshop? Oh, yes, sorry. Resolution.
So the next resolution is a resolution congratulating Governor Lee Almond on the naming of the park on Crescent Street in his honor.
Got a motion by Councilman Rivera, second by Councilman Costa, Councilman Solano, Councilman Brazil. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, on the discussion, just for the future, approving this, I have no problem, I grant it, I approve it, but when we name something, we should approve the naming of that before it's actually done. That's just as a matter of protocol.
So noted. So noted. Next item.
Item is resolution welcome HPD Kyra Rala Shimano was moved to Central Falls.
Motion approved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Rosetta, I think that's your
Yes, it is.
resolution.
I wanted to present it yesterday.
He's already been here. You went there.
I had two other religious functions to
Okay,
attend.
it's okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Names, ayes have it.
Next item is resolution designating October 2017 as Community Planning Month.
That's Jonathan's. I think it's self-explanatory if you read it.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Acosta, second by Councilman Figueroa. Any discussion? Again, it's very well written. It explains everything. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nays? Hearing none, saying none, so approved.
Resolution opposing President Trump's decision to suspend the immigration program known as Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Okay, we have a motion by action to amend,
And I accept the amendment.
which is Councilwoman Rivera. Second, the amendment by Councilman Rosier.
What is the amendment?
Could you,
Just to add,
What's up?
copy,
She's expanding my resolution.
so I can read them, or I can just give it to Sonia and have it.
That's fine with me.
I would give it to Sonia
And
and,
you guys know.
All right, motion to approve the resolution as amended.
No motion to amend.
we have a
Oh,
motion
she did that.
to
So
amend.
second.
We have a second action by Councilman Rosier. All those in favor of the amendment, which will not be done tonight, is that correct?
I can amend the information.
I'll give it to her, she can type it up.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
We have to make another motion. As amended.
Yes.
Move to approve it.
Chair votes aye. Nays, ayes have it.
We have a motion to approve this amendment.
We have a motion. Yes. Mr. Rosier and
Yes.
second.
So, now we will vote this.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Hearing none, seeing none, ayes have it.
We then have resolution of St. Paul City Council condolences and congratulations, and I'll read the name. They were all submitted by Councilman Mosea. It is a resolution congratulating the St. Basil the Great Church and Parish Community on celebrating its 110th anniversary of its founding in the city of Central Falls. The second one is a resolution congratulating the Right Reverend Exarch Joseph Hagar on his 50th year of service to the Malachi Catholic community of Rhode Island. The next one is a resolution congratulating Dr. Marie Lizea Gazal on the achievement of her achievement of a doctorate degree in nursing from the University of Rhode Island in May 2017. And a resolution congratulating Samuel A. and Nancy Lizea on their 40th wedding anniversary in September 2017.
For a motion to approve those resolutions collectively. We have a motion by Councilman Lizzie, second by Councilman Solano.
Under discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Under discussion.
May I ask again that resolutions be listed and that the authors of the resolutions, all resolutions, whoever introduces the resolutions be designated. We do it to other resolutions, we should do it to all resolutions, Mr. Chairman. We should not differentiate between one resolution and another and who is the one who is introducing it. I ask that.
I don't think that's done.
I think it should be done, it has been done, and it should be done.
Nobody's,
And I object.
nobody's excluding your resolutions.
They're not being listed, Mr. Chairman.
Some of your resolutions don't even have wording.
They're not being listed. If it's a resolution of governance, then those resolutions are here, Mr. Chairman. All resolutions should be
So noted. No one's ever rejected your resolutions of condolence.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
No, they haven't.
You've left certain resolutions off.
Is that all, Mr. President?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Nays?
Move to recess, Mr. Chairman.
Don't you want to do the condolences, Mr. Lizea?
I can do them later than,
Okay.
because they're not even listed.
Okay.
Why don't you list them and submit them when you have the next council meeting an amendment, because I'm sure you're going to add things to the next meeting. If we do, then you could list the resolutions. I have no problem with that. I know it's getting late. and
Why don't you table the condolences?
Well, we're going to table everything else, Mr. Chairman. We're going to recess.
I think that's the last thing.
We still have
Good and well.
the petition by National Grid.
Petition by National Grid, which should be simple.
And the
It's
comments.
just the department has already passed this.
Do we refer to the claim?
What happened to the wrongful death?
We just have to refer that to the trust.
Right.
That's just a referral to the trust of the council. Allow that to happen.
I don't have a problem with that.
We should just take.
If you don't mind, it would just move the business faster. The trust needs your approval.
So I would just briefly say that the matter is brought by a plaintiff's lawyer on behalf of a Central Falls man who had an asthma attack, a father of two, and later died. And the allegation is that the fire department did not respond promptly. This falls within our coverage with the interlocal trust, and as it is over an allegation of $2,500, I would ask the council to properly refer to the trust for their defense of the city.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to refer to the Round Interlocal Trust this matter.
We have a motion by Mr. Lizzie to refer the matter to the interlocal trust. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Casa. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye. Nays? Hearing none, seeing none, ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn.
Recess.
Recess, or we can table the utilities one.
Well, that's a recess. We can take whatever else up.
I second, I can't even speak right now. I take back my motion and I second Councilman.
We have a motion to recess tonight's meeting by Councilman Lizzie, second by Councilman Casa.
And anything in between, Mr. Chairman, can be added as amended.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So, thank you, stand yourself.
Peace walk on Saturday.
Yes, car show on Sunday, peace walk on Saturday. Well, basically, it's to be like a peace walk and peace car show. Yeah, car show, very good, and peace walk.
I can subject to them with my brother.
Great, great.
I'll pick up
Good night.
You have an invitation here.
I'm sorry, what?
There's a lot of today.
I was gonna say, I met the down, you know what?